Chapter 2201, Talks Collapse. Amongst the Saint Empyreans, whether it was the older generation or younger generation, they all held a deep sense of hostility and envy towards Lin Ming. Lin Ming was far too blinding in existence. To break through to true divinity at around 10,000 years of age and also set up talks with the good fortune Saint Sovereign, this was already on a completely different playing field than them. Ever since ancient times, those of the same profession always competed against each other. This was true for martial artists, and especially if martial artists stood on opposite sides. No one wanted to admit that they were inferior, and no one was willing to destroy their own prestige to glorify the ambitions of others. What is His Majesty Saint Sovereign still waiting for? He should just strike right now. This Lin Ming relied upon a time enchantment to break into true divinity and is nothing at all compared to His Majesty the Saint Sovereign. The Saint Sovereign should deal with Lin Ming while we encircle the other human masters. In this battle today we can severely wound humanity. Many Saint Empyreans began to rapidly calculate various scenarios in their minds. As for talks or anything like that, they simply didn't care. For most of those present, today was a day of slaughter. And at this time, on the small planet, Lin Ming reached out a hand in invitation once more. Your Majesty Saint Sovereign, how about taking a seat? Lin Ming said with a smile, his tone calm and without waves. To be able to remain so composed beneath the pressure of the good fortune Saint Sovereign, this wasn't something that ordinary true divinity level masters could hope to accomplish. The good fortune Saint Sovereign looked at Lin Ming and said, I actually want to hear you speak, and listen to just what you can say. The good fortune Saint Sovereign waved his sleeves. In the next moment he was already sitting in the seat. The table in front of Lin Ming was only 20 feet long, and the two sat at opposite sides of the table. Lin Ming slowly poured a cup of wine. This caused the many Saint Empyreans present to feel bewildered. The good fortune Saint Sovereign held a supremely revered status within the saint race, and no one had the qualifications to sit at the same table and drink with him. This was true even for Soaring Feather and Astral Vault. But now, the human Lin Ming was treating the good fortune Saint Sovereign as an equal, drinking wine at the table. Whoosh! No one could see when, but a jade slip flew out from Lin Ming and towards the good fortune Saint Sovereign. The good fortune Saint Sovereign didn't even move. The arrow-like jade slip automatically stopped in front of him. Divine sense swept out. This was only an instant, but the good fortune Saint Sovereign immediately read through the information within the jade slip. Within the jade slip, Lin Ming had described the Soul Emperor's plot. The Abyssals would sooner or later swallow up the 33 heavens. The ancient war that occurred 10 billion years ago would descend upon the world once more. The contents of the jade slip would horrify anyone. Even the good fortune Saint Sovereign found it hard to remain calm after reading through it. He looked at Lin Ming with surprise and said, What did you say? You said that the Soul Emperor's body has been seized? His body was seized at least several 100 million years ago. The current 33 Heavens Soul Emperor is no longer a spiritus. Lin Ming slowly finished his cup of wine and poured more. The information that Lin Ming gave out caused a cold chill to creep down the good fortune Saint Sovereign's back. But there was no way he could fully believe Lin Ming's words. These events were far too world-shocking. If Lin Ming were intentionally deceiving him, there was no way he could know what was true and what was false. You said that Immortal Sovereign is sealed in the Dark Abyss's Demon God's tomb, and also that the Demon God's tomb has developed a spiritual wisdom that wishes to enslave the entirety of the 33 heavens. All of this is only said by you alone, so on what basis can I believe you? On the basis of your own judgment. Lin Ming simply replied. The good fortune Saint Sovereign couldn't help but sneer. You might as well have said nothing at all. With just a single jade slip you want me to end the war between humanity and the saints, and then transfer all forces to resist the spiritus? That is simply too ridiculous. Moreover, the story you created has too many holes. If you say that this demon god's tomb master is so horrifying and is capable of seizing the Soul Emperor's body and also controlling totem-level abyssals, then let me ask you why he has never bothered with me.
Since he can seize the Soul Emperor's body, then he can naturally take over me too. I control famine, and controlling me is the same as controlling famine. Wouldn't that even be easier? Moreover, something like me coming to these talks today would never have occurred if he did.
Lin Ming wasn't surprised by the good fortune Saint Sovereign's words. He had already considered this matter before. Lin Ming said, "No one has infinite strength."
According to the view of your Majesty Saint Sovereign, then I can ask you the same question.
How come the demon's god Tomb Master doesn't simply control all lives in the 33 heavens and dark abyss, seizing the bodies of all abyssals and becoming the absolute ruler of them all? If he did that, then no one would be able to oppose him. This is clearly impossible. He doesn't possess such horrifying strength, nor is his soul force strong enough. In other words, when it comes to controlling others or seizing the bodies of others, there is always a limit.
In truth, this is the same for everyone.
When a puppet master controls a puppet, there will always be a limit, especially when this concerns formidable puppets. Then, there must be a limit to the number of upper true divinities and peak true divinities that the demon god's Tomb Master can control.
This number surely cannot be too many.
For instance, let's say he can at most divide his soul into 3, one part seizing the Soul Emperor's body, one for deep, and one for flood, and by doing so he controlled the 3 most formidable existences in the world.
But as for you, it's regrettable, but you do not meet the standards.
Lin Ming spoke at an unhurried pace, but as the good fortune Saint Sovereign listened to him, these words grated on his ears.
Plainly speaking, good fortune's strength was too poor and wasn't even worth a glance. Lin Ming's explanation was fair and reasonable. Famine had been wounded long ago, and it was likely because of this that the demon god's Tomb Master gave up on controlling it. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's complexion darkened.
But he didn't lash out at Lin Ming's taunting.
So what if your story can be justified?
My Saint race has been preparing for this war for far too long, and you want my Saint race to call for a truce just because of a story alone and then transfer all forces to resist the Soul Emperor?
Wouldn't that be the greatest joke in the world? The good fortune Saint Sovereign said, still not believing Lin Ming's words.
But Lin Ming was already prepared for this. He slowly traced his spatial ring and drew out the black dragon spear. The good fortune Saint Sovereign narrowed his eyes, his body overflowing with killing intent. The pressure of a peerless powerhouse completely erupted at this moment. Even the planet beneath the good fortune Saint Sovereign began to shake, as if it couldn't withstand this pressure. As this massive pressure fell around Lin Ming, he lightly stroked the black dragon spear, not even lifting his head as he said, "In truth, the reason your Majesty Saint Sovereign launched an all-out war against humanity was to swallow up humanity and obtain a massive amount of resources and blood vitality, all in order to help you complete your ambitions to swallow all of existence? You believed that your final opponent was the Soul Emperor and that the Soul Emperor was your greatest threat to dominating the 33 heavens." The good fortune Saint Sovereign didn't deny or confirm Lin Ming's words. He only sneered and said, "And what are you trying to say? All of your plans are based upon the premise that the Saint race is stronger than humanity. But, if the Saints cannot defeat humanity, then I believe there is no reason for you to continue such a mutually damaging war." Lin Ming's words caused the good fortune Saint Sovereign's eyebrows to jump up, a cold light flashing in his eyes. Lin Ming and the good fortune Saint Sovereign's conversation wasn't isolated from others. The Saint Empyreans that were standing hundreds of miles away could clearly hear everything. Lin Ming's provocation caused them to draw out their weapons and revolve their true essence.
The Saints cannot defeat humanity? Ha ha, how funny. Some Saint Empyreans laughed in anger.
They wanted to fight here and prove just how silly Lin Ming's words were.
Towards the responses of the many Saint Empyreans, Lin Ming didn't care about them at all.
He faintly turned his head until his eyes came to a stop on Astral Vault God King and Soaring Feather God King. When these two arrived, Lin Ming had already sensed their presence. Lin Ming faintly smiled.
"Two God Kings, do you remember the agreement that we had in the past?" I agreed to withdraw from the war between the saints and humanity with you too, but we also agreed that I have a personal grudge with the good fortune Saint Sovereign, an enmity of life and death. I will not attack any saint race subjects, and will only strike out at the good fortune Saint Sovereign, right? Soaring Feather and Astral Vault vividly remembered their past agreement with Lin Ming. Astral Vault nodded, indeed. Very good. If you two God Kings do not interfere, then I will prove that. As Lin Ming spoke to hear, he turned towards the good fortune Saint Sovereign and slowly stood up. I will prove that my strength far surpasses that of His Majesty the Saint Sovereign. Then, on the battlefield, no one amongst the saints will be able to contend with Emperor Sakya and Empyrean Divine Dream. If so, then the saints will not be able to defeat humanity. At that time, is there still a reason for the war to continue? And under these same circumstances, will your Majesty Saint Sovereign still believe that I am lying to you? As Lin Ming spoke, his right hand had already grasped the black dragon spear. In that instant, the surrounding air froze over. Chapter 2202, Battle of True Divinities. Pang. The moment Lin Ming picked up the black dragon spear, the table and all the chairs around him exploded, turning into dust. Killing intent recklessly surged outwards. Lin Ming and the good fortune Saint Sovereign, two peerless masters, stood in sharp contention to each other. For powerhouses on their level, in the world of the 33 heavens, just their auras alone were able to shatter space. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's clothes flapped in the wind. A sneer hung on his face. At this moment, from within his body, a sound rose up, as if a dragon was howling into the heavens. This howl deafened the ears and impacted through the vastness of space, causing the world to lose its color and storms to stir up. Behind the good fortune Saint Sovereign, a 10,000-foot-high phantom of a spiritual god appeared. This phantom grasped a lance in hand, its appearance like a towering mountain. Its eyes were like two blazing suns that illuminated the world as it looked down upon everyone with cold disdain. Ah! A series of stuffy coughs spread throughout the audience. The human and saint race world kings were simply unable to look straight at this spiritual god phantom. Just from a single glance, they felt their bodies shake as if they had been struck by a hammer and were nearly forced to their knees. Even the many Empyreans present felt a tremendous pressure as they faced this spiritual god phantom, as if a mountain were being pressed down upon them. The force nearly made them fall to their knees in worship, unable to withstand the excruciating pressure. You have decided to fight me? The good fortune Saint Sovereign looked at Lin Ming, his tone filled with arrogant contempt. At this time, with the spiritual god phantom behind him, the good fortune Saint Sovereign seemed like a true living god. No one could defy him. Saint Sovereign immortal, 10,000 lives immortal. On the side of the saints, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's followers began to cry out. Those who dare affront His Majesty's dignity, death. Many Saint Empyreans were stirred into a frenzy as the good fortune Saint Sovereign revealed his strength. This was the might of their ruler. Moreover, none of them wished to engage in these meaningless negotiations to begin with. What they wanted to do was watch the good fortune Saint Sovereign roll over Lin Ming and suppress him, and then the saints could rush forwards in droves to rip apart the human forces so that not a single one of them was left alive. On the human side, as Emperor Sakya, Dark Demon Monarch, and the others saw this scene occur, all of them had dignified expressions. Xiao Moxin clenched her fists, her heart filled with worry for Lin Ming. They all knew that Lin Ming wouldn't be unreasonable with his decisions, but even though they knew this, they still felt anxious. After all, Lin Ming was facing the most powerful sovereign of the saints. For humanity, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's infamy and influence had been gathered over far too long a time, and had become impossibly heavy. In fact, in the hearts of many human martial artists, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had become a godlike existence in the 33 heavens. This was an existence that could swallow the destiny of humanity and reverse the heavenly Tao. If this wasn't the methods of a spiritual god, what was? This was a decisive battle that concerned the fate of humanity, so how could they not be worried? And now, this was especially true with the good fortune Saint Sovereign exposing his strength, making it so the leaders of humanity couldn't even bear to look towards him. time came to a standstill.
Lin Ming and the good fortune Saint Sovereign were only several dozen feet away from each other. Due to the fierce pressure they exuded, the planet beneath them began to quiver. Cracks appeared in the earth, as if the world below them would soon disintegrate. Lin Ming looked up at the spiritual god phantom behind the good fortune Saint Sovereign.
It looks like we have now entered a life or death battle.
If I lose, then you will surely take my life. If so, then if I win, it's impossible for you not to pay a price.
I will take away your Grand Mist Spirit Bead, seize your avatar of famine, and then liberate the destiny of humanity that you stole.
In the chaos all around him, Lin Ming's voice was like a rolling thunderclap that spread out for 10,000 miles in the void. All of the Saint martial artists were stunned as they heard this. This Lin Ming was crazy. In this situation he was still so arrogant. Those three things he listed were all the most important treasures to the good fortune Saint Sovereign. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead and Avatar of Famine didn't need an explanation. They were the reason why the good fortune Saint Sovereign was able to cultivate to his present level. As for humanity's destiny, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had gone into seclusion for 2,000 years in order to swallow those laws and integrate them into the Avatar of Famine and further his own cultivation. If Lin Ming were to take that away, it would be the same as wasting 2,000 years of time. Without a doubt, these three things that Lin Ming mentioned each touched upon the good fortune Saint Sovereign's reverse scale. The good fortune Saint Sovereign cackled in anger. His long hair danced in the air and his eyes overflowed with killing intent. Good. 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 The good fortune Saint Sovereign said. You desire my Grand Mist Spirit Bead, but I also desire the secrets on your body. You rose like a star, and in a mere 10,000 years managed to step into true divinity. How could you not have secrets on your body? Today, I will tear you apart piece by piece and find out just what you are hiding. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's hair flew up. His body was tall and prominent and his eyes shined. He was like a naturally superior being, an innate sense of suppression gushing out from him. Any more words are meaningless. Let us compare our strengths. This will be my first battle since I stepped into true divinity. I have been waiting for this for a long time. Lin Ming's figure flashed and flew up from the pavilion. He stood above a vast expanse of mountains and rivers on the small planet. As he looked at the good fortune Saint Sovereign, his gaze sharpened. Wah! Lin Ming flourished his spear. Time seemed to freeze. Everyone only saw a 10,000-foot beam of divine light cover their eyes, blinding them to. What happened? Then, in the next moment, an earth-shattering roar deafened the ears. Wild energy howled in all directions. The good fortune Saint Sovereign also punched out his fist at this moment. His fist was wrapped in divine light. Golden energy gathered around the good fortune Saint Sovereign's body, turning into astral essence war armor. This fist could shatter the starry skies. Fist light and spear light collided. The pavilion on the small planet, the earth, the plants, everything began to disintegrate. Mountains and rivers began to break apart and collapse downwards. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's fist light contained a potential that rushed forwards like a monstrous tsunami. But in the center of the fist light, the black dragon spear continued forwards with unstoppable momentum. Like a waterfall that fell for thousands of miles, the fist light was split open from the middle. Thousands upon thousands of light beams flew past Lin Ming, radiating all around him. Ca. These light beams pierced through the void, tearing into the ground and splitting open the earth. Everything that the light beams touched was brutally annihilated. And, what bore the brunt of the attack was the small planet beneath their feet. As this planet was struck, it began to completely implode upon itself from the light beams that tore into it. This was the terrifying strength of one of the strongest powerhouses in existence. A true divinity powerhouse was originally a god of a great world. When Lin Ming had the strength of a true divinity, most of his fights had been within the demon god's tomb. The demon god's tomb was like a spirit treasure that had been refined for 100 billion years and was indestructible in itself. In addition to the suppression of laws within and the grand array formation that stabilized the entire world, it was impossible to display such heaven-destroying strength within. But now, in the world of the 33 heavens, in the battle between Lin Ming and the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, their actions could cause planets to collapse. Be careful. The human forces and saint forces had already drawn back, but now they were forced back even more. If an Empyrean were to be sucked into a battle of this level, they would instantly be turned into ashes. Both sides drew back 100,000 miles. Then, the Empyreans on each side joined forces to weave together barriers of astral essence and true essence to resist the shockwaves. How is this? Lin Ming blocked His Majesty Saint Sovereign's strike, and he even broke through the Saint Sovereign's fist light. Many Saint race powerhouses witnessed Lin Ming's unstoppable spear light with their own eyes. They watched as that horrific energy broke through the fist light and reached the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. The black dragon spear shimmered with cold light as it thrust forwards. This spear contained the laws of life and death. The spear point was like the scythe of the death god, reaping all life. Facing this life-reaping strike, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign emitted a deep roar. His entire body released explosive crackling sounds as he displayed the Saint race's body transformation technique to its limits. Bang! The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign punched out his fist once more. This fist violently collided with the black dragon spear, causing it to wildly curve. But the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was also forced back from the impact of this spear strike. Ka. Faint cracks began to appear in the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's protective astral essence. His complexion suddenly changed. In that moment, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had felt a pervasive energy rush through these cracks and wantonly attack his body. Although this energy was weak, it was extremely tenacious and desired to swallow up his blood vitality. Humph! The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign coldly coughed. Astral essence erupted from within him as he destroyed this strength. But by now, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's eyes as he looked at Lin Ming had already changed. Although that had only been a probing strike just now, wasn't Lin Ming's strike also similar? In just a single strike, Lin Ming had managed to break through his protective astral essence. How could the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign not be startled? The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was startled, but the many saint powerhouses were left completely bewildered. Lin Ming's short exchange with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had destroyed a massive area of the void and even caused a small planet to collapse. This actually wasn't anything at all. But what shocked them was that Lin Ming's strike had forced the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign backwards. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had been forced backwards. Forced backwards. Backwards. It was like a demonic spirit was chanting curses into the ears of the many saint race martial artists. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, an invincible godlike existence in the hearts of the saint race martial artists, an existence that none of them could look up to, had been forced 10 miles away by Lin Ming's spear. How could this possibly happen? Many Saint Empyreans glanced at each other with ashen faces of dismay. For a time, no one could believe what had happened. Both sides had exchanged probing strikes, but Lin Ming was the one who had gained the upper hand. This meant that at the very least, Lin Ming possessed strength that was equal to the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Chapter 2203 The Strength of Good Fortune. Within the void, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign narrowed his eyes and looked at the distant Lin Ming. After a single exchange, the strength that Lin Ming revealed had left him immensely shocked. He thought he hadn't looked down on the abilities of this young man before him, but now he discovered that he had still underestimated him. You've really left me surprised. In 2,000 years, just what sort of fortuitous encounter did you find? The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign said as he took out a shining gold pair of gloves from his spatial ring. Pa! Pa! With two light sounds, these gloves slipped onto his hands. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had many true divinity spirit treasures and could use all 18 variations of weapons. But what he was most familiar with were fists. With a single punch, mountains and rivers shattered, a fist to rule the world.
Originally, when facing Lin Ming, the good fortune Saint Sovereign hadn't used his own spirit treasure or weapon to fight.
And in fact, he hadn't used his weapon for a long, long time. The good fortune Saint Sovereign believed that with his protective astral essence and his body transformation technique that had been cultivated to the limit, there was no one in the 33 heavens capable of wounding his mortal body. Even though he feared the Soul Emperor, the good fortune Saint Sovereign believed that the Soul Emperor would only be able to severely wound him with soul attacks. And in reality, with the good fortune Saint Sovereign having tempered himself to such a degree, his mortal body had become much stronger than most true divinity spirit treasures. Even if he didn't use astral essence, he still possessed an indestructible body. But today, Lin Ming's spear strike had directly crumbled the good fortune Saint Sovereign's confidence.
I underestimated you before.
I will acknowledge that you have the qualifications to make me go all out. As the good fortune Saint Sovereign spoke, explosive crackling sounds emitted from his joints.
Pa! 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 Thunderclaps rang out from the good fortune Saint Sovereign's body. His figure began to grow and his muscles bulged out. Golden scales started emerging from his face and arms. Shwa! The good fortune Saint Sovereign's robes were torn off his body, revealing an upper body that seemed carved from steel and covered with golden scales. These scales were like dragon scales. Just by taking a single one off, it could be refined as a top weapon, capable of piercing through a true divinity's defenses. That is His Majesty Saint Sovereign's body metamorphosis. A Saint Empyrean said, excitement thick in his voice.
And it was no wonder that they were excited. In the universe of the 33 heavens, there were few people capable of forcing the good fortune Saint Sovereign to use his true strength. Thus, the good fortune Saint Sovereign hadn't used his body metamorphosis for at least 100 million years. In fact, most saint martial artists had no idea that the good fortune Saint Sovereign possessed the body metamorphosis ability.
Ha ha ha! This is His Majesty Saint Sovereign's strongest fighting state. His Majesty Saint Sovereign is part of the great astral sun bloodline. Once he activates his body metamorphosis, his combat strength will multiply. His appearance will also become tyrannical and fierce, just like a gold dragon, invincible amongst the heavens and earth.
Many Saint Empyreans knew that Lin Ming hadn't used his full strength in his strike just then and had only been probing. But they also didn't want to believe this and didn't want to admit that Lin Ming was equal to the good fortune Saint Sovereign. They believed that the good fortune Saint Sovereign was undefeatable within the 33 heavens. Even if there was someone capable of standing on equal ground with the good fortune Saint Sovereign, that person could only be the Soul Emperor, and not some mere 10,000-year-old junior like Lin Ming. After changing his body, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had become 10 feet tall and his aura had become that much more horrifying, nearly unbearable. The good fortune Saint Sovereign emitted the roar of a dragon from deep in his body. Then, he smashed out his fist at Lin Ming. At this time he was truly like a gold dragon in the form of a man, his momentum overwhelmingly vast. One fist to rule the universe. In that moment, everyone's field of vision seemed to be blocked, as if endless mountains and rivers were coming crashing down. These were mountains and rivers formed by the good fortune Saint Sovereign's fist. This strike was aimed at Lin Ming. But even the human and saint race powerhouses standing 100,000 miles away also felt as if they were facing this strike. A formidable suppressive feeling pushed down on them, making it feel as if their backs would break. A fist turned into mountains and rivers. Just what sort of fist technique is this? Not only were the human martial artists panic-stricken, but many saint martial artists were also shocked. They had never seen this fist style of the good fortune Saint Sovereign before. In truth, most of them didn't know what techniques or hidden cards the good fortune Saint Sovereign possessed, because they never had the chance to see the good fortune Saint Sovereign fight. A terrifying pressure seemed as if it would crush everything to pieces. Because the void couldn't withstand the pressure, massive tracts of space began to crack apart and disintegrate. Space storms wildly swept out through tens of thousands of miles.
This was absolute strength, one that was impossible to match up to.
In terms of mortal bodily strength alone, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had truly reached the peak of the 33 heavens. Lin Ming stood at the epicenter of this massive pressure, facing those terrifying mountains and rivers that came crashing down on him. Then, Lin Ming's mortal body also began to change. The blood of Azura began to burn in his body. Lin Ming's body started to rise up. Bone armor and scales spread out over his body, and his looks became far more fierce and demonic. Two side-like bone spikes jutted out from his elbows. A thick tail drilled out from his back, chaotically weaving about like a python. In just several blinks of an eye, Lin Ming had risen to a few dozen feet in height, like a great tower of black iron. Compared to the good fortune Saint Sovereign that was only 10 feet tall, the difference was like that of an adult and child. Not just that, but the muscles on Lin Ming's body began to wildly grow, as black as night, a transformation that was several times more exaggerated than the good fortune Saint Sovereign's. This figure was incredibly hideous and fierce, like a demonic Rakshasa that crawled up from the depths of hell. This is. Let alone the saints, even the human martial artists were left dumbfounded. This was Lin Ming. Emperor Sakya, vast universe, and everyone else stared on with eyes wider than full moons. They weren't surprised by Lin Ming's body metamorphosis. In the past, Lin Ming was able to galvanize the power of his Azura blood to undergo the Azura body metamorphosis. But compared to this current body metamorphosis, the previous body metamorphosis could be called simply putting on some makeup. This time, Lin Ming had body metamorphosized into an abyssal. Compared to such an exaggerated shape, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's previously domineering body metamorphosis now seemed gentle. Bang! The vast mountains and rivers crashed onto the demon Lin Ming's body. But, the demon Lin Ming didn't dodge at all. He bent his knees and used his terrifying strength to stiffly shoulder those mountains and rivers. The demon Lin Ming's muscles ballooned and blue veins stuck out all over him like worms. This was like the scene from ancient mythology, a demon carrying a divine mountain on its back. In terms of body transformation, the saints indeed existed at the peak. However, what existed at an even higher peak than the saints were the abyssals. To use absolute strength to overwhelm all. The demon Lin Ming forcefully withstood the good fortune Saint Sovereign's attack. At this time, everyone felt light flash before them as a divine beam of light broke through the chaos and hurled towards the good fortune Saint Sovereign like a meteor. At the center of this divine beam of light was Lin Ming's true self. Lin Ming had summoned his demon avatar to resist the good fortune Saint Sovereign's one fist to rule the universe attack. Then, he used his true self to attack the good fortune Saint Sovereign. What? The good fortune Saint Sovereign was shocked. He couldn't be bothered with trying to figure out how Lin Ming had accomplished this, because he had just used his strength and it would take time to gather himself again. Good fortune divine art. The good fortune Saint Sovereign shouted out loud. Astral essence swirled around his body, as if gold were pouring out all over him. In an instant, a massive vortex of energy rose up in the universe with the good fortune Saint Sovereign at its center. The good fortune divine art wrested away the strength of good fortune from the world. And, this so-called good fortune was the sum total of all things in the world besides sentient beings. In this way, the good fortune divine art was a training method where one cultivated the outer universe, just like the Azura Sutra. However, it was much more cruel, tyrannical, and evil than the Azura Sutra. The Azura Sutra cultivated the world of the universe to thoroughly commune with the body. But, the good fortune divine art forcefully seized the power of the outer universe for one's own use. The energy vortex wildly grew. The strength of the universe in its surrounding trillion miles was all plundered by the good fortune Saint Sovereign. Several 100 million miles away, there was a planet that brimmed over with life. But because of the good fortune Saint Sovereign's strength, this planet began to lose all of its vitality. Grass wilted and old trees withered. Rivers and lakes dried up and even the great seas began to quickly evaporate. Birds and beasts fled in all directions, crying out in fear and horror. But in the end, they all exploded into a mass of blood-red fog that was turned into pure essence energy and sucked into the energy vortex. Like this, a planet full of life was ruined. Not only planets with life, but even suns and moons and all other celestial bodies had their energies swallowed up by the good fortune divine art, their light gradually becoming dark. Even the interstellar space dust, heat, light, everything was drawn in by the good fortune divine art. And all of this strength was absorbed by the good fortune Saint Sovereign. What rose in correspondence to all that loss of life was the good fortune Saint Sovereign's strength. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's eyes became red and bloodthirsty, his face ugly and malevolent. Facing the irresistible strike of Lin Ming's true self, the good fortune Saint Sovereign released a thunderous roar and then punched out both his fists. Bang! It was like two stars colliding. A crazy amount of the power of good fortune swept through the world. Energy erupted like countless volcanoes, stirring everything into turbulent chaos. The Black Dragon Spear's spear light disintegrated. Beneath this terrifying strike, Lin Ming's figure disappeared. Lin Ming. On the human side, many people cried out in alarm. Xiao Moxian was extremely anxious, her palms began to stream with sweat. The good fortune divine art was the good fortune Saint Sovereign's strongest cultivation method. The good fortune Saint Sun had also used it in the past, however, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's good fortune divine art was countless times more powerful. She didn't know whether or not Lin Ming had been able to resist that strike. Chapter 2204 Suppressing Good Fortune. Rumble, rumble, rumble. Raging energy swept out without end. 100,000 miles away, whether it was the energy barriers created by the joint efforts of the human Empyreans or Saint Empyreans, it seemed as if they would all break apart. Seeing this, the complexions of many martial artists changed. If these energy barriers were to shatter, then the good fortune divine art would wash over them, and the Empyreans with weaker cultivations would have their life force directly sucked away and be killed. At this moment, in the turbulent flows of energy, a giant Azura phantom appeared. This Azura pushed a wheel-like grinding pan in its hands, slowly suppressed the raging power of good fortune between the heavens and earth. The Azura Sutra and good fortune divine art were both cultivation methods that cultivated the world of the universe. But in terms of rank, the Azura Sutra was clearly much better. The two supernatural powers clashed. A sun seemed to rise up between Lin Ming and the good fortune Saint Sovereign, illuminating the vastness of space. This was a battle between top true divinities. If this were a lower realm world like the Skyspill planet, then just the shockwaves produced from this fight would have directly disintegrated the planet. Energy surged. Divine flames burned to the heavens. Within the tyrannical energy, Lin Ming and the good fortune Saint Sovereign were like two meteors flying through space, repeatedly crashing into each other. After revolving the good fortune divine art, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's body seemed to be forged from gold, like a deadly war god come to life. But Lin Ming was fighting with his true self and demon avatar. Sometimes they joined together, sometimes they separated, their attack styles were endless. A fist to break the mountains and rivers. After revolving the good fortune divine art and being flooded with the power of good fortune, the good fortune Saint Sovereign's combat strength had risen to a new level. Astral essence gushed out of him like a sea without end. Fist after fist, the good fortune Saint Sovereign punched out tens of thousands of times, each fist stirring up a space storm that could sweep through the 33 heavens and hurtled towards Lin Ming. These tens of thousands of fist strikes blocked off all of Lin Ming's directions to evade in. They smashed down together into a single point, able to crush anyone to paste. Such fist speed, such a terrifying energy output, this was already a realm that the martial artists watching were unable to comprehend. You want to compare attack speed? Seeing these attacks that covered the skies, Lin Ming coldly sneered. He shook his right hand and the Black Dragon Spear's point began to violently shiver as innumerable spear shadows appeared. Then, Lin Ming grasped his spear in both hands and rapidly thrust out flowers in a storm.
The originally shaking spear shadows and the tens of thousands of thrusts that Lin Ming just stabbed out actually formed a net of attacks that was even more dense than that of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereigns. If the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's attack was comparable to landslides and tsunamis, then Lin Ming's attack was like a howling planet. To compete against speed with speed, the attacks recklessly collided. These fast and violent strikes contained enough energy that even an ordinary true divinity would have to exhaust all their strength in just a few short breaths of time. Bang! The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was forced back. He exploded into a roar. The Good Fortune Divine Art condensed to its limit. All of his fist potential gathered into a single point and then wildly erupted. This fist was similar to Lin Ming's Celestial Tyrant Manual's 100-layered waves. By gathered the strength of all these fist strikes together, he could punch out with his strongest blow. Come! Lin Ming roared into the air. Behind him, his demon avatar held a thick evil demon spine that he brought pounding downwards. This was a demon spine found within the demon god's tomb. It was left behind by an ancient beyond divinity demon, and was used to stabilize the array eye of the array formation. It was an ominous and unlucky object that shouldn't have been brought out from the demon god's tomb. But Lin Ming had taken a liking to the power of this demon bone. It was simply far too perfect a weapon for his demon avatar. Thus, after reaching true divinity and going into seclusion, he spent a considerable amount of time to use the world strength of the Emperor Bone Sea to wash the demon bone and constantly erase the demon mark in it. Finally, he used his demon avatar to refine this spine, turning it into its own true weapon. At this time, as this evil bone appeared, it brought with it the cruel and horrifying world power of the demon god's tomb. This evil bone had been soaked in blood for 100 billion years. As it appeared in the 33 heavens, 10,000 demons seemed to roar out, their cries unstoppable. Bang! The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's gathered fist potential collided with the demon bone and completely shattered. In the heaven-shaking flows of energy, Lin Ming grasped the black dragon spear and used flowers in the storm once more. Spear light recklessly shot outwards. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's pupils shrank and he was forced back again and again. Seeing that he could no longer evade, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign bit down on the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood. He stimulated his protective astral essence to the peak, wanting to forcefully resist Lin Ming's strike. A dreadful collision rang through the air. Even though the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was defending with all his might, he still couldn't completely block Lin Ming's spearlights. Several spearlights eventually pierced through the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's protective astral essence. After making it through the cracks, they drilled into the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's body. These spearlights were filled with energy from the laws of life and death. Upon entering the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's body, they wildly rampaged around, destroying anything they could. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign coughed as blood vitality tumbled within him. A wisp of blood flowed out from the corners of his lips. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had been injured. From the moment the battle began until now, this was the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's first injury. It had already been a long time since the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had been wounded. And, the last time he wounded was also related to Lin Ming. It was when he was chasing after the primal god race and trying to destroy them. But when he was wounded that time, it was due to the Azura decrees left behind by the Azura Roadmaster. Just what sort of character was the Azura Roadmaster? He could be called the greatest powerhouse to exist in the vast history of the 33 heavens. To be wounded by the Azura decrees left behind by the Azura Roadmaster was an acceptable result, but now he was wounded by the hands of Lin Ming, a junior. To be wounded by such a person left the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign wallowing in shame. At this time, the Saint race martial artists had all fallen silent. Not only could Lin Ming directly face off against the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, but he had also wounded the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Such strength was undoubtedly a heavy slap on every single one of their ears. At this time, with reality laid out before them, they could no longer delude themselves and say that Lin Ming was only being overly arrogant and bluffing about his strength.
Soaring Feather and Astral Vault watched Lin Ming and the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign fight each other, and they were deeply shocked by what they saw. As true divinities, they were acutely aware of the terrifying heights of strength that Good Fortune and Lin Ming had reached. Lin Ming is too terrifying. At this rate, it is only a matter of time before he takes the step beyond divinity. Astral Vault God King said, fear lingering in his heart. He was glad that he didn't tear apart all consideration for face with Lin Ming in the past. When he rushed into the wild universe to demand his disciples back, he hadn't tried to kill Lin Ming due to the presence of Divine Dream. If he had tried to recklessly kill Lin Ming's people at that time, then he might have been a dead man standing right now. Indeed, Soaring Feather God King nodded as she took a deep breath. And besides Soaring Feather, Fairy Blue Lotus also had a complex look on her face. She had long since been at a loss for words. When a martial artist reached the true divinity realm, wanting to jump ranks to fight became increasingly difficult. This was because there were no mediocre individuals that were capable of reaching true divinity. And the current Good Fortune Saint Sovereign should be near or even at the peak of true divinity. Yet, he had been wounded by Lin Ming, a lower true divinity. If he were to wait for Lin Ming to step into the peak of true divinity, then just what realms would his strength reach? It was hard to imagine. In the raging flow of energy, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign roared into the heavens with rage. His eyes overflowed with killing intent as they locked onto Lin Ming. He slowly and clearly said, I will exhaust your blood, sever your life. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign bellowed. He raised a hand and then fiercely dug into his own chest. Goo goo. Blood flowed out from the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's chest. Lin Ming's pupils shrank. He already knew what the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was planning to do. This was a scene he had already expected, but even though he knew it was coming, it was impossible for him to stop it. He could only face it as it came. I never imagined that I would have to actually use this move against a mere 10,000-year-old junior. From the flesh and blood of his own heart, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign dug out a bead the size of a baby's fist. This bead was pitch black, as dark as ink, with faint blood-like lines running over its body. This was the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. The moment the Grand Mist Spirit Bead appeared, the void for the surrounding 100,000 miles was covered in a thick black light. This black light was similar to the primal chaos energy from the formation of the universe. As it appeared, the many saint martial artists and human martial artists felt their blood slow down and found even taking a single breath fraught with difficulty. Grand Mist Spirit Bead. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign has finally brought forth the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign originally didn't want to use the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. After all, in the face of many powerhouses from the 33 heavens, he actually had to bring out a divine tool to deal with a junior. This was far too humiliating. Yet now he had no choice but to use the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. If he didn't, he would sooner or later be defeated by Lin Ming. Chapter 2205, Glory of the Spirit Bead. In these years, during the Great War between humanity and the saints, the might and prestige of the Grand Mist Spirit Bead had spread throughout the 33 heavens. It was without a doubt the most famed and illustrious divine tool in the 33 heavens. After all, not many people knew of the origin amethyst crystal or the stone of eternal life. This Good Fortune Saint Sovereign has finally dropped any semblance of shame and wants to use the Grand Mist Spirit Bead to deal with Lin Ming. Some human martial artists said with angry indignation. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's cultivation surpassed Lin Ming's by a great deal to begin with, and he was tens of thousands of times older than Lin Ming, and yet he now wanted to use the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. These actions were far too despicable. The winner is king and the loser is the villain. Since ancient times, all that has ever mattered is victory. Any ideas of shame or face are completely insignificant. Dark Demon Monarch said, his eyes shining as he looked at the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. He turned his gaze towards Lin Ming. He believed that Lin Ming already anticipated this occurring before the battle began, because if one wished to defeat the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, they would have to deal with the Grand Mist Spirit Bead in his hands. Lin Ming. Today I will use your blood to further build up the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. I believe that with the quality of your blood, the might of this bead will rise to new heights." The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's eyes overflowed with killing intent. During these years, he had been arduously refining the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. Divine tools also needed to be nurtured and raised, but of the three great divine tools, only the Grand Mist Spirit Bead hadn't been held by a beyond divinity level powerhouse. This was because the three great divine tools were born in the 33 heavens and life had existed in the 33 heavens for only several tens of billions of years. Moreover, the true pinnacle of the martial arts civilization had been 10 billion years ago, but at that time only two beyond divinity level powerhouses had appeared. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign wanted to nurture the Grand Mist Spirit Bead to its highest state. If he could nourish it with the blood vitality of a peerless genius, then it would naturally obtain immense benefits. Facing the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, Lin Ming took a deep breath, his eyes darkening, turning earnest. When he originally set up talks with Good Fortune, he never thought to rely on any good results coming from it. The collapse of the talks was already a 99% assured occurrence, and once that happened, what Lin Ming wanted to obtain the most was the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. With this bead, his desire of breaking into the 8th Dao Palace would come to fruition. In truth, when he was in the demon god's tomb, he had nearly broken into the 8th Dao Palace. However, he had diverted most of the world's strength into consolidating his true divinity boundary, thus the 9 stars of the Dao Palace had fallen slightly behind. At this time, a sound transmission echoed in Lin Ming's ears. "Lin Ming, if you need me to help, then just tell me. Although I cannot deal with Good Fortune myself, I can support you." Diverting his attention shouldn't be a problem at all. This voice held a tone of concern, causing Lin Ming to feel warm. This was Shang Mei's voice. In the 33 heavens, if one didn't consider Good Fortune were the sole emperor, then Shang Mei was a peerless powerhouse only inferior to Lin Ming. Between her and Lin Ming, the difference was at most a small true divinity boundary. I should be able to deal with this. The three divine tools are not invincible. In the past, the Azura Road Master and Immortal Sovereign each held divine tools, and yet they were not able to cut down the demon god Tomb's master. Similarly, Good Fortune has the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, but he might not necessarily be able to do anything to me. If I really cannot handle it and obtain victory, then it won't be too late for you to help. In a battle of life and death, Lin Ming naturally wouldn't care about something so stupid like fighting one against one for the sake of some martial arts spirit. Moreover, even if he and Shang Mei added their ages together, this old freak Good Fortune was still thousands if not tens of thousands of times older than they were. There was just no need to care about the ideals of martial arts. First, Lin Ming didn't want Shang Mei to help because he wanted to test the limits of his strength. Second, and more importantly, he didn't want to expose Shang Mei's identity with so many people around. In these past days, Lin Ming had seen that Shang Mei didn't want to mix in with humanity. After all, in the eyes of humanity's martial artists, Shang Mei was a spiritas, someone that belonged to an enemy race. Shang Mei followed Lin Ming and wasn't relying on humanity. Out of the entire human race, the only person she cared about was Lin Ming. As for whether the others lived or died, she didn't care at all. As for the reasons that Shang Mei followed Lin Ming, they were all extremely complicated situations. For instance, her union with Lin Ming at the Skyspill planet, the relationship between her past life and Immortal Sovereign, these types of things couldn't be explained to the public, and nor could they be clearly explained. Thus, in the eyes of the public, the reason that Shang Mei followed Lin Ming would be just one: a woman had betrayed her own race to run off with a man from an enemy race. Even if everyone was respectful to Shang Mei because of her strength and Lin Ming's status, they would all inevitably develop such an idea in their hearts. Lin Ming didn't want Shang Mei to be criticized like this, even if it were only the subconscious thoughts of people. This was because fate already weighed far too deeply on Shang Mei's shoulders. At this time, in front of Lin Ming, the Grand Mist Spirit Bead rapidly revolved. A blood pond hell seemed to be sealed within it. Even though they were separated by a space of 10 miles and numerous chaotic space storms, Lin Ming could still feel his blood vitality restlessly stirring in his body. It was like the spirit bead was invisibly devouring his blood vitality. I will use the Grand Mist spirit bead to pierce through your heart. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's eyes were blood red. His astral essence surged to the limit. With a roar, his joints emitted explosive crackling sounds. Fist to rule the world. The good fortune Saint Sovereign's fist smashed into the Grand Mist spirit bead. This was the good fortune Saint Sovereign's strongest fist strike. It carried all of his energy as he poured it into the Grand Mist spirit bead. Then, the Grand Mist spirit bead was sent hurtling outwards as it shot towards Lin Ming. Its speed reached the extreme, so fast that it surpassed almost everyone's reactions. Even for Soaring Feather, all she felt was a flash of light in her eyes. She simply couldn't tell what had happened. In the darkness of space, the Grand Mist spirit bead drew a perfectly straight line as it fired into Lin Ming's chest. This ultimate attack didn't need to come from some tricky trajectory, because its speed was so fast that no one could avoid it. Puff! The Grand Mist spirit bead crashed into Lin Ming's chest. Lin Ming's protective power of divinity and demons instantly shattered. The spirit bead continued with unstoppable force, directly tearing into Lin Ming's flesh and blood and thrusting into his body. Its speed was almost as fast as light. As the spirit bead entered Lin Ming's body, it immediately stopped, as if it were caught on something. However, this didn't matter, because in this moment the Grand Mist spirit bead began to wildly swallow up the strength of Lin Ming's blood vitality. The Grand Mist spirit bead's fearfulness didn't rely on the physical impact of its attack, but on its ability to suck a person dry into a withered corpse. In that moment, everyone felt their hearts skip a beat. The good fortune Saint Sovereign diabolically grinned. Although he didn't understand why his attack couldn't pierce through Lin Ming's heart, that was unimportant, because as long as the Grand Mist spirit bead entered his body, Lin Ming's flesh and blood would be sucked dry. Lin Ming! Xiao Moxian cried out in alarm. The minds of all the human martial artists tightened and they held their breaths. Lin Ming was the pillar of humanity. If he were to perish here, humanity would perish along with him. Everything happened within a spark of light before they could respond. And at this time, Lin Ming's mortal body began to rapidly change. His body began to grow, his skin turned black, his muscles bulged out, and spikes drilled out from him. In the blink of an eye his appearance turned cruel and hideous, into the form of an abyssal. Lin Ming had transformed into his demon avatar, using the strength of it to withstand the attack of the Grand Mist spirit bead. In terms of the strength of blood vitality, Lin Ming's demon avatar had swallowed a part of Famine's strength and its blood vitality was several times more powerful than his true self's. As the Grand Mist spirit bead swallowed the blood vitality of Lin Ming's demon avatar, Lin Ming's demon eyes flashed with a cold brilliance. With a roar, he hurtled towards the good fortune Saint Sovereign. After forcefully withstanding the swallowing power of the Grand Mist spirit bead, the demon avatar's lips were stained with blood, but it still rushed ahead. This was like a confrontation between two martial artists in which one martial artist pierced through the other with a spear. But, not only did that severely wounded martial artist not retreat, but he pushed forwards into the spear instead, allowing the spear to pierce through his body in order to give his opponent a final fatal strike. What? The good fortune Saint Sovereign was shocked. He didn't think Lin Ming would be so ruthless and aggressive, and he also couldn't imagine why the Grand Mist spirit bead hadn't passed through Lin Ming's heart. Even this powerful abyssal demon in front of him shouldn't have such potent defensive powers. In front of the Grand Mist spirit bead, there was no flesh and blood mortal body that should be able to withstand such a strike. However, the good fortune Saint Sovereign didn't have time to think of such things. He faced Lin Ming's desperate death strike. Humph, you are already at the end of the road, rushing up here just means a faster death. The good fortune Saint Sovereign sneered. But in the next moment, the sneer froze on his face. He stared helplessly on as the demon Lin Ming, who was hurtling towards him, suddenly stretched out a claw and thrust it into his own chest. The scales were torn apart by the sharp claws, fresh blood sprayed out. And then, a situation occurred that left a creepy tingling on everyone's scalps. the demon Lin Ming actually drew out a spine from his chest, one that was dripping with blood.
As this spine was torn out from Lin Ming's chest, an alarming amount of blood and ruined flesh sprayed out with it.
And the Grand Mist Spirit Bead was caught in the center of the spine. What was able to block the Grand Mist Spirit Bead from piercing through Lin Ming's heart was the evil bone he obtained from the demon god's tomb. Lin Ming's demon avatar had already refined this demon bone. He fused it into his mortal body, and by relying on it he could resist the attack of the Spirit Bead. In this moment, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was left panic-stricken.
Chapter 2206 Defeating Good Fortune. This is, what is happening? The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign began to panic.
He wanted to recall the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, but at this time he felt a strange strength cover it. As Lin Ming hurtled towards the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, he used the world strength of the Emperor Bone Sea to block off the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. Although he couldn't seal it away forever, as long as he could delay it for even a tenth of a blink of an eye, that was more than enough time.
Lin Ming attacked.
His true self appeared. Grasping the Black Dragon Spear, he shot towards the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. As for Lin Ming's demon avatar, he also thrust out the demon spine in his hands. The two forces gathered together. A giant Azura wheel appeared in the air, creaking and humming as it spun. At this moment, the Azura wheel seemed to become the heavens. At the same time, a 7-revolution red lotus shot out from between Lin Ming's eyebrows. The red lotus bloomed and overflowed with the life and death laws. In this moment, the 7-revolution red lotus was like the earth. The Azura wheel and 7-revolution red lotus unexpectedly fused together as one. The Azura heavenly Tao and holy scripture laws had undergone a preliminary fusion. This was the result of the highest comprehension of laws that Lin Ming had achieved in his 1,500 years in the demon god's tomb. These two strengths were infused with all of Lin Ming's power of divinity and demons as it all came hurtling towards the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign.
The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was shocked.
At this time, the Grand Mist Spirit Bead was temporarily blocked off by Lin Ming. Without the Spirit Bead, he could only resist his enemy with his two fists. In this critical life or death moment, he bit down on the tip of his tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. With a loud roar, this blood essence began to burn with blinding brilliance, erupting like a great rising sun. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign revolved his energy to its limits and punched out with both fists.
Bang!
The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's left and right hands roared out like two flying divine dragons, smashing into Lin Ming's two great laws. This was a frontal collision between peak true divinity powerhouses. It was like two suns crashing into each other.
Wild astral essence and the power of divinity and demons erupted. Golden light shot out into the void, illuminating the entirety of space.
100,000 miles away, the energy barriers laid down by the saints and humans began to wildly shake.
Cracks began to form from the impact of energy. Everyone covered their eyes, feeling blinded from the light.
Whether it was the saints or humans, every martial artist was left speechless. Not to mention the younger generation, but even upper Empyreans, peak Empyreans, Emperor Sakya, Soaring Feather, and everyone else, was utterly dumbfounded by this battle between peak true divinity level powerhouses. This didn't seem like strength that a person should possess, but the might of the universe itself. Perhaps only a giant star exploding in a supernova could emit such power. Waves of light swept out, it was hard for anyone's sense to pass through it.
Lin Ming won?
The human martial artists glanced at each other. In that final moment, it should have been Lin Ming who had the upper hand. At the end, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had actually burnt his blood essence. Not only did he use the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, but he was also forced to burn his blood essence afterwards. It was clear from this just how terrifying Lin Ming's strength was, to the degree where a person who nearly reached the peak of true divinity had to go all out in order to deal with him. The light continued shining out for dozens of breaths of time before gradually fading away. Then, people could finally find out just what happened on the battlefield 100,000 miles away.
As they saw the scene appear, the faces of many Saint martial artists turned pale white. On the battlefield, space for 10,000 miles had completely collapsed, forming a giant black hole. All of the nearby martial artists had been disintegrated into dust, and as for their king, the good fortune Saint Sovereign, his entire body was left covered in blood. His wounds were extremely heavy and golden scales were broken all over his body. His bones were shattered in numerous places and he was covered in rags, looking like a corpse that floated in the void. Not too far away from him, Lin Ming had already returned to his human form. His severely wounded demon avatar had stepped back into his inner world. As a result, besides a pale expression, Lin Ming appeared completely unscathed on the outside. They had already expected that Lin Ming would win in that final exchange. After all, the good fortune Saint Sovereign had to hastily defend, and even though he had burned his blood essence, he might not have been able to fend off Lin Ming's attack where he had gathered all his potential. But they didn't think the disparity would be so great. This was simply a complete victory. At this time, Lin Ming had taken hold of the Grand Mist Spirit Bead and was slowly erasing the spirit mark within it. When the good fortune Saint Sovereign was in his weakest moment was the best opportunity to erase his spirit mark. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead was something Lin Ming had wanted to obtain for a long time. In fact, for Lin Ming, of the three great divine tools, the Grand Mist Spirit Bead and Origin Amethyst Crystal were the most practical. Those two divine tools could directly increase his strength, since he mainly dual cultivated in the body and energy, and cultivated the soul as an auxiliary third. Although the good fortune Saint Sovereign was heavily wounded by Lin Ming, the moment that Lin Ming started to erase his spirit mark in the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, he quickly felt it and regained consciousness. He looked up, his eyes filled with murder as he glared at Lin Ming. This was the greatest defeat in his life. And also the greatest shame. In front of innumerable masters from the 33 heavens, he had been utterly defeated by Lin Ming, a mere 10,000-year-old junior. He had even used every possible method at his disposal. Not only that, but he had been beaten down like a dead dog, and even the Grand Mist Spirit Bead had been taken away. All the effort he had put in for so many years had failed. Lin Ming's soul force was far greater than the good fortune Saint Sovereign's, and his strength was also superior. And, with the Grand Mist Spirit Bead not possessing an artifact spirit, Lin Ming started to slowly refine it. To the good fortune Saint Sovereign, this was no different than cutting off a chunk of his flesh. He wished he could tear Lin Ming to shreds. Lin Ming could clearly feel the good fortune Saint Sovereign's hatred and pure animosity towards him. But this was also reasonable. After all, to be beaten up into such an appearance and also have his treasure taken away, how could he not hate? I know that it doesn't feel good to have your spirit mark erased by me, but this is a result you cannot change. If you don't want your soul to be injured, then I advise you to remove the spirit mark on your own initiative. Lin Ming's words grated on the good fortune Saint Sovereign's ears. He was a supreme ruler of the world, and yet he was being humiliated like this. Not only had he been defeated, but he even had to remove his own spirit mark to give his enemy his treasure. How could there be such truths in the world? However, even if the good fortune Saint Sovereign stubbornly resisted and refused to comply, he would merely be extending his own pain and damage to his soul. Lin Ming would simply expend a little more time and energy, and in the end the Grand Mist Spirit Bead would belong to him anyways. This was the suppression of absolute strength. This was suppression, this was shame, but this was a situation where he could not fight back. If he complied, then his dignity would fall through the floor. But if he resisted, he would only be giving himself an even greater pain. In the world of martial artists, strength was everything. The good fortune Saint Sovereign grit his teeth, adamantly refusing to respond to Lin Ming. His eyes were blood red, as if he wanted to swallow Lin Ming alive. Lin Ming looked at the good fortune Saint Sovereign's glare. His movements slowed down and a thoughtful look appeared on his features. Lin Ming, do you really plan on taking away the good fortune Saint Sovereign's Grand Mist Spirit Bead and Avatar of Famine, and then after releasing the destiny of humanity, you will simply let loose this tiger to create trouble in the future? At this time, Shang Mei's voice echoed in Lin Ming's ears. That was the original plan, but now I think my thoughts were too naive.
Lin Ming was also considering this. Without a doubt, the good fortune Saint Sovereign hated him to his marrow. Even if he released the good fortune Saint Sovereign and allowed him to live, would he feel any sense of gratitude? Perhaps the good fortune Saint Sovereign would hide away to gather his strength, waiting for a day to stab him in the back. The abyssal demons were natural enemies to the 33 heavens. But, while the Soul Emperor wanted to swallow up the 33 heavens, what if he didn't exterminate all the races at once, but instead left some that he would allow to surrender instead? When the Soul Emperor revealed his irresistible strength, there might be some races willing to degenerate into servants for the abyssals. At that time, no one could tell whether or not the good fortune Saint Sovereign would turn traitor. His contradictions with the Soul Emperor were in truth not completely irreconcilable. If he were to submit himself to the Soul Emperor, then the good fortune Saint Sovereign knew he would face a potential fate where he might be tossed away in the future, no different from a dog that had outlived its usefulness. But, wasn't this slightly better than joining forces to resist the Soul Emperor? It might be. In the eyes of the good fortune Saint Sovereign, even if he joined forces with Lin Ming to resist the Soul Emperor, the likelihood of defeat was still extremely high. And even if he won, his strength was still inferior to Lin Ming's, he would still worry about being eliminated. Then, in this difficult dilemma with two hard choices to choose from, the good fortune Saint Sovereign might switch sides and ally with the Soul Emperor to deal with Lin Ming. At the very least, since the good fortune Saint Sovereign hated Lin Ming so much, he might take this chance to kill him and soothe his thoughts and ego. Moreover, what if the Soul Emperor truly took in the good fortune Saint Sovereign and allowed him to become one of his minions? Although the good fortune Saint Sovereign might have a master perching on top of his head, for better or worse, with his level of strength he could still take charge of several universes and continue his days of ruling over the life and death of others. Thinking of this, Lin Ming hesitated. He originally hoped to join forces with the good fortune Saint Sovereign to fight back against the Dark Abyss. This seemed like the most reasonable outcome. But once both sides had uneven levels of strength, and he was also stronger than the good fortune Saint Sovereign, then a subtle change would occur. Lin Ming didn't want to place his future destiny in the hands of others. To him, Ouyang Boyan had been enough of a lesson. In the future, if he were to go into seclusion or go out seeking more lucky chances, or if the war were to carry on, what if the good fortune Saint Sovereign decided to take action against his family and friends? The consequences would be unimaginable. Realizing this, Lin Ming gently rubbed his chin. He looked at the good fortune Saint Sovereign and suddenly grinned. My apologies, but after further consideration, I have changed my mind. Chapter 2207 Hold the Overlord. For a time, the good fortune Saint Sovereign couldn't understand what Lin Ming meant. But at this time, Lin Ming attacked, his fist smashed into the good fortune Saint Sovereign's chest. Pang! With a loud explosion, the already wounded and powerless to resist good fortune Saint Sovereign simply wasn't able to withstand Lin Ming's attack. His chest was smashed in and he vomited out a mouthful of blood. You! The good fortune Saint Sovereign was enraged. But this punch was only the beginning. Lin Ming's fists fell down onto the good fortune Saint Sovereign like a raging storm. The good fortune Saint Sovereign was covered in blood. His meridians tore apart and his golden scales began flying off. His bones and organs were all shattered by Lin Ming. He could be said to be completely broken. However, with the good fortune Saint Sovereign's powerful vitality, he didn't die. In the surrounding void, many Saint Race Empyreans and World Kings watched helplessly on as this occurred. All of them were left slack-jawed with shock and indignation, but none of them dared to speak out. In the face of so many saints, their Saint Sovereign was being horribly beaten up, and yet none of them could utter a single word or lift a single finger. This was the suppression brought about by absolute strength. There was not a single person that dared rise up against Lin Ming, because in front of him, any single one of them could be instantly killed. Your Majesty Saint Sovereign. The many martial artists of the Good Fortune Saint Palace felt their hearts quiver. Not too long ago, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had been a living god in their hearts, an unreachable existence that controlled the life and death of all beings beneath him. Not to mention the ordinary disciples of the Good Fortune Saint Palace, but even the Empyrean-level powerhouses rarely had a chance to see him. And yet such a Saint Sovereign was being savagely ruined by Lin Ming.
This should be enough.
Lin Ming looked down at the mangled Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. After a brief probe, he determined that the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had lost all strength to resist, and even a great world king could freely handle him.
Then, Lin Ming's hands began to move. Seals flew out from his hands and into the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's body.
These seals were fused with the Holy Scripture and Heavenly Sutra laws. They were a fusion of both laws.
Their effect was to completely imprison the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's cultivation.
After all, no matter how it was said, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was a powerhouse nearly at the peak of true divinity. Out of all the races in the entire 33 heavens, it was hard to find someone that could be a match for the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. But now, with the great enemy looming on the horizon, killing the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign would be incredibly inappropriate. This was equal to ripping out the spine of the saints.
Without the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, the cohesion and total combat strength of the saints would plummet precipitously.
But letting the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign go was impossible because it was likely that he would turn traitor. If so, it was best to just kill him here and end any troubles before they began. Thus, Lin Ming decided to make a compromise.
He would imprison the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign and hold the Overlord to control his vassals.
Of course, if he were able to control the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's thoughts and implant a slave seal in him, then that would be for the best. But, with Lin Ming's current level of strength, wanting to forcefully control the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was impossible. As for planting a slave seal in his body, that was even more unrealistic. To allow someone else to control their mind and heart, to completely hand over their life, that was something that not even low-level martial artists would submit to, much less the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign who controlled his own race. The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign seemed to understand Lin Ming's thoughts. He looked at Lin Ming with hatred thick in his eyes, like the most sinister and deadly snake, wishing that he could tear Lin Ming to shreds.
Humph!
Lin Ming coldly snorted.
He smashed a fist into the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's face.
Towards this man that had tried to take his life several times before, that had placed him in numerous precarious life or death situations, and had even killed or caused the deaths of numerous heroes of humanity and the ancient races, including 3 lives old man, Empyrean Primordius, Heavenly Empress Shan Qing, the primal god race's old patriarch, and countless others that Lin Ming owed gratitude towards. Lin Ming simply didn't have a single shred of pity for the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. If the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign still wanted to show off his strength after falling into his hands, then Lin Ming would simply use a greater strength to roll over him.
You think that you are still that all-powerful Saint Sovereign? You are nothing but a captive.
Lin Ming looked at Good Fortune with cold indifference. In your heart, all lives are to be suppressed by you, humiliated by you, or even swallowed by you. All lives should be honored by this, and even obediently offer themselves up to you. As for those that aren't willing to be suppressed, humiliated, or swallowed by you, they should be cut to pieces, completely exterminated. This is your mindset, your logic. Your logic may be overbearing, but it isn't wrong. Because if you have the strength, you can control the life and death of all beings. But now, my strength is even greater than yours, so you should be honored by me ruining you. As Lin Ming spoke, he smashed his fist into the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's face. His punch cracked open the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's eye sockets and caused him to bleed from his eyes.
The Good Fortune Saint Sovereign couldn't even open his eyes anymore.
His strength had been completely exhausted and even his wounds regenerated at an agonizingly slow pace.
Lin Ming's fingers continued to flicker.
Light-striking sounds echoed in the air. Lin Ming planted 12 Azura seals in the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's body, sealing up his 12 main meridian's roots. Then, he formed 11 Holy Scripture seals, sealing up the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's organs. Following that, the 36 death points, the 360 acupoints, the 36,000 pores, all of them were sealed up by Lin Ming. These seals contained the highest laws of Lin Ming's life studies. Unless Lin Ming personally unsealed them, it would be impossible for anyone else. Of course, if there was someone stronger than Lin Ming, they could still rely on brute force to erase these seals. But even so, they would create calamitous damage to the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's body. Lin Ming carefully probed the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. After feeling that everything was about right, he summoned Primordius' heavenly palace and tossed the half-dead Good Fortune Saint Sovereign inside like a sack. The truth was that there was also a space within the Grandness Spirit Bead. But, since Lin Ming had yet to fully refine the Grandness Spirit Bead, he didn't want to recklessly use it. Then, Lin Ming turned towards the many saint race martial artists. A void of 100,000 miles separated them. Lin Ming took a single casual step forwards, instantly utilizing a great void transfer to arrive in front of them. At this time, a cold chill crept into the hearts of all the saint martial artists. The pressure that Lin Ming exuded was too great. They had all personally witnessed the sad and tragic scene of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign being completely suppressed by Lin Ming. As long as Lin Ming wanted to, he could slaughter them like chickens and dogs. Moreover, none of them had the courage to escape from Lin Ming's hands. Perhaps Lin Ming only needed to summon a force field to cage all of them inside this space. All of you, Lin Ming opened his mouth to speak. The saint martial artists all felt their hearts skip a beat. They regretted following the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign here to set up these talks. Just what kind of talks was this? This was simply a grand slaughter festival. Most of you have hands stained with the blood of my people. Lin Ming's first few words caused the many saint martial artists to feel a cold chill creep up their backs. It was over. They were all done for. It was time for all debts to be settled. Lin Ming simply didn't care about the ugly expressions of these saint martial artists. Because of you, humanity has suffered countless casualties. They have been forced to leave their homelands to roam through the wilderness. How many families have been broken up? How many children have starved to death? How many people, because of this war, don't even have their bones left behind? There have been many humans born in the chaos of war, born in the wilderness, that have never been able to see their homeland even before their deaths. If I were to kill any one of you, it would be perfectly justified. As Lin Ming spoke to here, the saint martial artists all held their breath. Many of them felt a cold sweat dripping down their backs and their minds tremble. However, I will not kill you all. First, it is because I once swore an oath that I would withdraw from the war between humanity and the saints, only dealing with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign alone. Secondly, and most important, the reason I do not kill you is because I do not want humanity nor any other race of the 33 heavens to experience the chaos and turbulence of war. I do not want lives to be wasted away like coal in the flames. Life is innocent. Even amongst the saints, there are naive little children, there are kind-hearted subjects. This war was never their intention. As Lin Ming spoke to here, he suddenly looked towards Soaring Feather God King. Soaring Feather. Soaring Feather's thoughts stirred. On this day, Lin Ming had become the ruler of the 33 heavens. With his status, he could give orders to any person here. Looking at her master being called out by her name by Lin Ming, Fairy Blue Lotus felt her heart tighten. She looked at Lin Ming with complex light in her eyes. After 2,000 years, Lin Ming now stood at a completely incomprehensible height. Now, she and Lin Ming could be said to exist in two different worlds. She was only worried for her master. She wondered why Lin Ming had called out to Soaring Feather at this time. You follow me. Lin Ming's tone brooked no refusal. With a wave of his hand, a force field isolated out the world. Soaring Feather hesitated for a moment and then stepped into Lin Ming's force field. She had already faintly guessed just what Lin Ming was going to say to her. Chapter 2208, For the People. Within the enchantment, Lin Ming passed a jade slip to Soaring Feather God King that described the Soul Emperor's plans. The truth was that before this, Soaring Feather God King had already heard some clues from the dialogue between Lin Ming and the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. However, as she truly read through the contents of the jade slip, she was shocked speechless. At this time she would no longer doubt that Lin Ming was making up a story, because with his strength, he could already control the destiny of humanity and even decide the life and death of the entire saint race. In particular, at some unknown point in the future he would surely step beyond divinity and become a peerless powerhouse like the Azura Roadmaster, perhaps even surpassing him. If there really wasn't a powerful potential enemy threatening Lin Ming, then Lin Ming could have already stretched back and waited without worries for the day when he could unify the 33 heavens as ruler. The Great War of 10 billion years passed, the Abyssals are returning. Soaring Feathers slowly digested this information. In the 33 heavens 10 billion years ago, the primal god race had ruled the world. The primal god race of that era was countless times more powerful than the current combined strength of humanity, saints, and spiritas. Even so, they had to pay a grievous price in order to push back the Abyssals. The current humanity, saints, and spiritas were races on the decline. If they wanted to resist the abyssal demons, it truly felt like throwing an egg against a boulder. Lin Ming said, "The Dark Abyss is also far weaker than it was 10 billion years ago." In order to complete his plan, the demon god's tomb master has killed a massive number of higher abyssals. The demon god's tomb master was far too ruthless and cruel. In order to achieve his goals he was willing to resort to any means. Soaring Feather's heart skipped a beat. "You want me to gather together the saints to join forces with you?" "Yes. It seems that your relationship with Astral Vault God King isn't too bad, and the influences below him should obey you. As for the Good Fortune Saint Palace, I have the life of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign in my hands, so there shouldn't be anyone that would oppose you. The current you can be called the most powerful character amongst the saints, and also the one with the highest level of authority." In terms of strength, Soaring Feather was naturally stronger than Astral Vault was, and thus she was the most appropriate candidate for leader. Good. Soaring Feather took a deep breath. "About the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, what is your plan?" Soaring Feather hesitated for a bit as she looked at Lin Ming. Her relationship with the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign wasn't good at all, and in the past, when he suffered, she even celebrated it. This was also the reason why Soaring Feather's response had been so cold when he asked her to take action in the past. However, Soaring Feather owed the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign a favor. And, no matter how it was said, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had shown graciousness to her in the past. In addition to them being from the same race, Soaring Feather also felt sad to see Good Fortune fall so low. She didn't want to see the saints exterminate humanity, but at the same time she didn't want to see Lin Ming execute Good Fortune. "I will not kill the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. But in this upcoming great calamity, I cannot even say I can completely control my own destiny, much less the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's. Although I have said I will not kill Good Fortune, that is only in normal circumstances. If he has even the tiniest thought or indication of betraying the 33 heavens, then I will strike him down without hesitation." Soaring Feather was satisfied with Lin Ming's response. In truth, if Good Fortune betrayed the 33 heavens, then regardless of the situation, Soaring Feather would have done everything possible to cooperate with Lin Ming and find ways to kill Good Fortune. But in the current 33 heavens, due to the war between humanity and the saints, both races were horrible to look at. The only race that was fully intact was the Spiritas, but their situation might be even worse because the Soul Emperor's body had been seized so long ago. Only the heavens knew what the current situation of the Spiritas was. Facing this great calamity, Soaring Feather felt a deep powerlessness. The cards in her hand were too weak, so weak that she couldn't summon any confidence. "Lin Ming, do you think we can win?" Soaring Feather quietly asked, sighing. The reason she asked this question was because of the rising impotence in her heart. She wanted to find some words of comfort from Lin Ming. Lin Ming thought for a moment. Then, he said, "I am not sure whether we can win or not." The future is not set in stone. We martial artists cultivate the body, cultivate the heavenly Tao, cultivate the divine soul, but in the end, just what are we cultivating for? What are we chasing after? Even I have been left confused by this. For glory? That is only fleeting smoke before the eyes. For strength? I already possess the power to sunder the heavens and shatter the earth, to annihilate stars and the vastness of space. To become immortal? In these years I have also chased after immortality. However, when I was in the Emperor Bone Sea, I looked upon the countless pained remnant souls there as well as the 100 billion year plot that the Soul Emperor had laid out for the sake of immortality, and suddenly, at that time I felt that chasing after eternal life was meaningless. For we that practice martial arts, we naturally must fight. But in fact, what we are fighting is the chaos of the world, the time when the catastrophe arrives. The extinction of races, lives lost like burning coals, the collapse and destruction of great worlds. This time, the fight has reached the peak. Then, perhaps the peak of martial arts is originally for the common people of the world. As Lin Ming finished speaking, Soaring Feather was stunned. The peak of martial arts was for the common people of the world? These words sounded too pretentious, too empty, and perhaps even a bit fake. However, upon thinking about it, no one was able to separate themselves from the common people. This was also true for martial artists. A race was a person's roots. Without roots, no matter how towering or lofty a tree, that tree would still wither away and die. Without one's race, without the common people, then the so-called everlasting immortality was meaningless. One would be no different from a remnant soul in the Emperor Bone Sea, facing infinite loneliness and sorrow. Thus, the peak of martial arts was for all the people in the world, because every martial artist was originally one of these people. Being for the people of the world was the same as being for oneself. In this moment, Soaring Feather seemed to be becoming aware of something. But then, Lin Ming waved his hand, withdrew the force field and flew away. Whether we can win or not, as martial artists we must fight them with all our strength. Lin Ming's final words echoed in Soaring Feather's ears. Lin Ming passed through space and appeared in front of the human forces. As the human martial artists saw Lin Ming fly towards them, they prepared to cheer and celebrate, and even offer up words of congratulations. But, they never thought that Lin Ming, who returned in victory, wouldn't have any sense of high-spiritedness or joy. Rather, his complexion was calm, even somewhat dignified. This caused the words of congratulations to become stuck in the throats of those about to speak them. "Let's go," Lin Ming simply said. Then, he took Xiao Maxian's hands and flew into Primordius' heavenly palace, leaving the crowd of human Empyreans and world kings blankly staring at each other. They didn't know what Lin Ming was up to. The great mountain that had pressed down on the chest of humanity for almost 10,000 years had finally been removed, and yet Lin Ming's reaction had been so subdued. At this time, Shang Mei also quietly followed behind. During the battle between Lin Ming and the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign, Shang Mei had stood on the human side. But, no one had been able to sense her. The moment that Lin Ming entered Primordius' heavenly palace, Shang Mei also appeared like a wisp of blue smoke. As Xiao Maxian saw Shang Mei appear, she was left silently astonished. She couldn't help but admit just how terrifying a character Shang Mei was. She hadn't sensed Shang Mei's presence, and yet she was able to easily conceal herself the entire time. From this, one could infer Shang Mei's strength. "Miss Ji." Shang Mei greeted Xiao Maxian. Xiao Maxian nodded in response. For a time, she didn't know what to call Shang Mei. Whether it was referring to Shang Mei by her full name or calling her the Soul Empress, neither seemed appropriate. As the two women faced each other, the atmosphere became a little awkward, even with Lin Ming present. "Shang Mei, 3 days from now I will bring you somewhere." Lin Ming's words were sudden. Shang Mei was left startled. "Where to?" "The Azura Forbidden Zone, Cold Ice Mirror." The Cold Ice Mirror was where Lin Ming had first seen the past life of Shang Mei. When Lin Ming first arrived at the Primal God race, he had tried to obtain one of the spots to enter the Azura Forbidden Zone in order to seek out a method of salvation for humanity.
Afterwards, the primal god race headquarters had been destroyed by the Saints.
But the Azura Forbidden Zone was left behind by the Azura Roadmaster, and the array formations that protected it were extraordinary. With the strength of the Saints, it was impossible for them to break through them.
Cold ice mirror?
Xiang Mei asked, puzzled.
You will know once you get there. There, you might find something about your last life.
Lin Ming believed that the cold ice mirror contained a wisp of remnant soul from Xiang Mei's previous life. This was because when he faced the past life Xiang Mei in the cold ice mirror, she had been no simple phantom formed by an array formation. Rather, she seemed like a remnant soul with intelligence. Lin Ming also clearly remembered every word and expression that the past life Xiang Mei had said or shown.
What about you? Xiao Maxian asked.
I plan on going into seclusion to open up the 8th Dao Palace of the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. Of the 9 stars of the Dao Palace, 7 were bright and 2 were dark. The gap between the 7th Dao Palace and 8th Dao Palace was also a massive leap, one comparable to a large boundary in cultivation. Now that Lin Ming had the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, he could definitely make a breakthrough.
Chapter 2209, Refining the Spirit Bead.
A month later, deep within the endless starry skies.
Pa-ta. Pa-ta.
The Grand Mist Spirit Bead was grasped in Lin Ming's hand. It emitted dull ringing sounds that reverberated into the heavens and earth. It was like the heart of a divine god, beating in its own strange rhythmic undulations. The galaxies in the sky seemed to dance about it, and starlight gushed out, weaving out into the void. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead was controlled within Lin Ming's hand. And not too far away, there were many human martial artists present. Those that could stand here either had significant connections to Lin Ming or were one of the pillars that supported humanity. For instance, there was Lin Huang, Zhou, Xiao Moxian, Emperor Sakya, Dark Demon Monarch, Empyrean Vast Universe, Dragon Fong, Hang Qi, and many others, resulting in a total of 20 to 30 people. They stood here to bear witness to Lin Ming refining the Grand Mist Spirit Bead and making a breakthrough in the 9 stars of the Dao Palace. And, the most important reason they were here was to take advantage of Lin Ming's breakthrough and gain an even deeper awareness of the heavenly Dao. To them, this was an incredibly great lucky chance.
To break into the 8th Dao Palace was to leap past a large boundary in the 9 stars of the Dao Palace.
At that time, the heavenly Dao would descend and wash over everyone present, baptizing them.
Even if one didn't cultivate the 9 stars of the Dao Palace, they would still obtain considerable advantages.
In truth, even essence-gathering system martial artists would be concerned with tempering their mortal bodies. After all, it was impossible for them to allow their bodies to be as frail as those of mortals. The more powerful their mortal bodies, the greater their advantage. Everyone held their breath, quietly looking towards the godlike man in the distance, waiting for him. The starry skies was silent. The spirit bead emitted wisps of blood energy, like the dawn in the early morning, a rosy light blooming in the world. Every wisp of light was as thin as a needle and as sharp as a sword as they shot into all directions. It was like countless peerless vicious beasts hurtling out into the horizon, all of the boundless blood vitality seeming as if it would lift up this world, leaving the heart racing with anticipation. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead had been refined by the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign for many years, and it contained a massive amount of the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's strength as well as the flesh and blood essence of the Famine Avatar. After having swallowed up humanity's destiny, the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had already refined his avatar of Famine. As a totem-level abyssal, Famine was naturally far more formidable than the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. However, Famine had been wounded billions of years ago and its boundary had plummeted. Following that, Famine's soul was suppressed by Divine Seal and its body divided into 2. With just its incomplete mortal body, it was impossible for it to be the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's match. During the 2,000 years that the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign was in seclusion, he used the Grand Mist Spirit Bead to completely swallow up Famine's strength and gather it into his own. At this time, Lin Ming could feel that within the grandness spirit bead, Famine's flesh and blood still possessed a single sliver of unwillingness to be swallowed. The current famine could really only be regarded as a mass of flesh and blood. Beneath the suppression of the spirit bead, it continued to writhe about, struggling and resisting. However, no matter how much it struggled, no matter how much it stirred its blood vitality, Lin Ming's hands would forcefully isolate it from the outside space. Divine chains of order flew across the cosmos and thunder dragons roared out loud as they surrounded the grand mist spirit bead. Lin Ming's 5 fingers were like 5 boundless mountains, stubbornly suppressing it. In the next moment, Lin Ming held the grand mist spirit bead and soared into the air. In an instant he traveled hundreds of millions of miles away and sank deep into a vast sea of stars. He sat there with legs crossed, like a deity stepping upon the world, imprisoning any fluctuations of power. He opened his left hand. Countless rays of light bloomed from his fingertips, turning into tiny runes that whistled about. Each rune drilled into a star, pulling out beams of brilliance, like endless mountain ranges of starlight. These beams of light wove through the air, turning into a transparent furnace formed of starlight with Lin Ming at its center. This was a method of refining blood vitality that Lin Ming had learned of in the Azura Road's final trial's 7th level, the Galaxy Void Furnace. Lin Ming wanted to thoroughly refine and swallow all the blood vitality contained within the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. The Grand Mist Spirit Bead contained all the bloodline strengths that the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had accumulated throughout all the years. After so many years of refinement, if he could absorb the blood vitality inside, then this would absolutely be far superior to any heavenly treasure. Bang! The Galaxy Void Furnace emitted a great strength that could burn mountains and boil seas. This strength attacked the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. Countless beams of starlight were like innumerable stars that bombarded the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. Not just that, but in the center of the furnace, Lin Ming's 7 orifices, his eyes, nose, ears, mouth, everything began to spout flames. These flames were a ghostly purple. Although they didn't seem to contain any heat, this was because the heat of the flames had condensed to the limit and manifested in such a manner. As these flames appeared, they gave off an alarming feeling as if they could burn down the world and disintegrate all of existence. Then, Lin Ming lifted his hands together and formed seals. Rainbow-hued thunder appeared, weaving together in the skies like hued beams of sunlight. This was Lin Ming's power of thunder. It had already been a long time since Lin Ming used the power of thunder and fire. And after Lin Ming stepped into the true divinity boundary and withstood a baptism of the heavenly Tao, then whether it was controlling the source of fire or the source of thunder, he had reached the pinnacle in these aspects. The great Tao flames, spirituality of starlight, power of thunder, all of it was like a great grinding pan that spun over the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, constantly rolling over it. This process of refinement continued for an unknown length of time. Finally, a crystalline drop of something that resembled a bloodstone fell down from the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. As this thing appeared, raging blood energy followed it. It was like 10,000 demons howled from within, with countless lives roaring out in unison. As soon as this thing appeared, it possessed its own spiritual wisdom. It rose up in the air, assuming the appearance of a 3-inch tall baby as it tried to escape. Lin Ming's eyes flashed, his heart overjoyed. Without a doubt, this was a drop of blood essence condensed from all the blood energy within the Grand Mist Spirit Bead as well as Famine's flesh and blood essence. This drop of blood essence already possessed enough spiritual wisdom upon birth that it could take on the form of a person. It could be called something that had seized the good fortune of the heavens and earth. Without giving the baby a chance to escape, Lin Ming's thoughts moved. With a thought, a net of runes appeared in the void and descended like falling mountains, completely imprisoning the blood vitality of the baby. After this baby was held by Lin Ming, it suddenly became fierce and vicious. It turned into a demon, roaring with rage as it furiously struggled to escape. However, Lin Ming blocked off the surrounding void with a force field, completely suppressing it. As soon as this baby appeared, the purest strength of blood vitality from the Grand Mist Spirit Bead began to pour out, gathering with the baby as the center. Time passed, day after day. The blood energy within the grandest spirit bead slowly diminished. Finally, the last traces of blood energy were all drawn out by Lin Ming. In a single breath, Lin Ming swallowed up all of this blood vitality essence. In that moment he felt as if he had swallowed a sun. Limitless strength bloomed within him like countless sharp blades. Beams of divine light attacked him from within. Even though Lin Ming was as strong as he was and possessed a nearly invincible body, his flesh still cracked and tore apart. One could imagine just how strong the essence of blood energy within the grandest spirit bead had been. If an ordinary true divinity were to attempt to withstand this, their body would have exploded already. Lin Ming felt his blood seethe and boil over. His entire figure was shrouded in a chaotic pall of blood energy, making it difficult to see what was happening to him. Wonderful! Although there was pain, Lin Ming's expression was like he was drunk on this pain, enjoying it to its fullest. He suddenly fell to his knees, his eyes shooting into the void like arcs of lighting. Without a doubt, this was the most powerful state his mortal body had ever been in. If he could refine this power, he could rise further in the 9 stars of the Tao Palace and also increase his boundary yet again. At this time, a part of the 9 stars of the Tao Palace was still locked away, and humanity's essence gathering system had been sealed by the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. Now Lin Ming would sever these chains. For Lin Ming, who had defeated the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign and had taken control of the grandest spirit bead, this wouldn't be difficult at all. With a loud roar, countless deafening thunderclaps rolled out from within Lin Ming's body. His blood galloped and crashed like great rivers, rumbling and exploding. Within Lin Ming's body, a certain place began to turn blazing hot. A mysterious strength started to resonate with some unknown place in the void. Whirl! 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 Endless wisps of star brilliance wove through the air. Stars began to appear within the cosmos, scattering inexhaustible starlight through the void. One of these stars was particularly dazzling, as if it appeared from the darkest void in space. However, at this time, dark gray divine chains of order began to appear in the infinite void. These chains were like continuous mountain ranges that sparkled with countless runes. They were like pythons locking in the 9 stars of the Tao Palace, attempting to block Lin Ming's breakthrough. You might as well appear together, so you can be severed together. Lin Ming waved his hand. The power of divinity and demons erupted and blasted the great vault of the heavens. A moment later, another set of divine chains of order appeared in the void. These divine chains of order were deep purple, as if they locked in endless fog. These were the divine chains of order that the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had used to seal away humanity's essence gathering system. The divine chains that locked away the essence gathering system were clearly far more formidable than those that caged in the 9 stars of the Tao Palace. This was because these divine chains were complete, and also because the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign had spent a great deal of time and effort to arrange them. Seeing these divine chains of order appear, the 20 to 30 human martial artists present all held their breaths. In the past, they had all tried several times to attack these divine chains of order. To do this they overdrew their blood vitality, exhausted their strength, and even burnt their blood essence. But, all of them failed to overcome these chains. Many times, they were even left heavily wounded. For the martial artists of humanity, these chains left far too deep an impression. Chapter 22:10, Summons. These divine chains of order locked up humanity's destiny. It was like this 3.6 billion years ago and continued until the present, like a great mountain pressing down on humanity. In front of Emperor Sakya, Xiaoma Xian, and everyone else's gaze, Lin Ming walked towards those divine chains of order one step at a time. With every step he took, the stars in the highest heavens trembled. This was a manifestation of Lin Ming's body having reached the peak, where he achieved subconscious resonance with the great Tao of the heavens and earth. When Lin Ming arrived in front of the divine chains of order that bound the 9 stars of the Tao Palace, all sorts of phenomena appeared around him. Celestial dragons weaved through the air, phoenixes cried out, and a land seemed to appear within the chaotic misty of blood, one that had genuine life living upon it. This was a phenomenon that only appeared when the mortal body became sanctified, when the body became a world in itself. Lin Ming started to gather his strength. Before he did anything, the divine chains of order in front of him began to tremble, as if they couldn't withstand Lin Ming's horrifying strength. Bang! Lin Ming punched his fist out. Endless blood vitality gushed out. His blood burned with brilliant flames that lit up the vast skies and burned down those divine chains. Open! With a loud bellow, the faint fog of blood which lingered in the air turned into blood dragons that smashed into the divine chains of order in a violent frenzy. Pang! 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 The divine chains of order finally broke apart and disappeared in the world. In that instant, the 9 Tao palaces released an incomparably dazzling brilliance. Out of the 9 stars, one of them shined like the bright moon at night. Starlight flowed out in rivers, all of it falling down upon Lin Ming's body in torrents. This starlight came from the 8th Tao palace that Lin Ming desired to break into, the bright Channel Tao palace. The 9 stars of the Tao palace. The 7 bright stars were Ravenous Wolf, Titan Gate, Cherished Kismet, Merciful Song, Ardent Virtue, Martial Song, and Army Breaker. The 2 dark stars were Bright Channel and Hidden Origin. The last 2 Tao palaces of the 9 stars of the Tao palace wouldn't grant special abilities to a martial artist. However, they were like 2 sets of chains that linked together the 9 Tao palaces, causing them to shine ever brighter as they allowed the great Tao to blend into them. To open the last 2 Tao palaces would bring about an overall increase in strength for a martial artist. Like an Empyrean breaking into true divinity, there would be a comprehensive increase in strength. After the divine chains of order were torn apart, Lin Ming borrowed the endless blood vitality within the grandness spirit bead to soar upwards. He took the brightest of the 9 stars and directly thrust it into his body. During these years, Lin Ming had accumulated far too much in the body transformation aspect. With the addition of the grandness spirit bead helping him, even though this was a large boundary in the 9 stars of the Tao palace, he still made a direct breakthrough. The star was refined by Lin Ming. The bright Channel Tao palace began to burn. Wang! Hum! At this time, the 7 bright Tao palaces within Lin Ming's body responded. They emitted sounds of ecstatic joy, as if they took great pleasure in what was occurring. Even the already opened 8 inner hidden gates, the gate of life, the gate of death, the gate of healing, all of those gates, all of that endless life potential burst out from Lin Ming's body once more. This stimulation was even more thorough than before. Even the previously unrefined blood vitality essence that remained in his body began to burn away like snow in an inferno. Lin Ming's mortal body was constantly attacked and regenerated within the billowing blood vitality. His skin surged like waves in a storm and his entire body emitted an aura that seemed as if he could destroy the heavens and earth. Even some rays of light twisted around him, unable to approach him. He seemed to become a single body with the world, a self-contained system, repelling any strength that approached him. Piki Paka! Blinding bolts of lightning drilled out from Lin Ming's pores. They encircled him like threads of silk, like endless purple hairs that lingered around him. Billions upon trillions of great Tao laws took shape, turning into scales that bloomed on Lin Ming's skin like flowers. More and more blood vitality rushed out, seething with excitement, breaking everything open, forming a furnace that sprayed out without end, illuminating this entire part of the world with divine light so that everything turned translucent. Nearby, Xiao Maoxian, Emperor Sakya, and the others were able to feel this strength. In that moment their blood vitality seemed stirred by the blood vitality and potential emitted from Lin Ming's body. Most of the starlight from the 9 stars gathered in Lin Ming's body, but a small part of it also dissipated outwards, flowing through the void. If Lin Ming were to make a breakthrough alone, this starlight would dissipate in vain. But now, with so many human martial artists present, they naturally wouldn't allow this starlight to go to waste. This starlight was strength that approached the source of the great Tao. Whether it was Xiao Maoxian, Emperor Sakya, Zhou, or anyone else, they began to absorb the power of the 9 stars. However, the one who absorbed the most starlight was actually not Zhou, but Lin Huang. Lin Huang also had Lin Ming's bloodline running through his veins, and he experienced no pushback in refining the power of the 9 stars.
Moreover, Lin Huang dual cultivated essence and energy.
Compared to Zhou, who cultivated energy and divine, he naturally possessed the superiority. This scene continued for several hours. After Lin Ming thoroughly refined the strength of the 9 stars, he seemed to emerge from the darkness of creation, a silent immortal that climbed towards the peak of the human mortal body that had been sealed away for billions of years. At this time, Lin Ming's mortal body emitted an even brighter brilliance. As for light from the universe, as these rays approached Lin Ming, they were crushed by a dark and strange strength. The current Lin Ming's mortal body had reached an incomprehensible degree. Lin Ming's body possessed infinite strength that needed to be vented outwards. His eyes flashed and he looked not too far away towards the divine chains of order that imprisoned the essence-gathering system. This was the good fortune Saint Sovereign's final arrangement, one that he used to swallow humanity's destiny. Lin Ming roared out loud. He smashed out a fist. Bang! The world shook. The divine chains of order disintegrated. Now, even famine had been completely swallowed by Lin Ming. The good fortune Saint Sovereign had relied on famine's abilities to form these divine chains of order. Now, beneath Lin Ming's potent strength, these divine chains naturally weren't a match for him. Gotcha! Gotcha! The divine chains of order collapsed at an increasingly fast pace. Not too far away, Emperor Sakya and the others watched on, speechless. They had paid deep prices and put in so much time and effort, yet they weren't able to break through these divine chains. Yet, these divine chains of order were being so easily torn asunder. This power of divinity and demons could really be called the endless great Tao laws, rolling over and crushing everything. After Lin Ming shattered these divine chains of order, he could feel many pained remnant souls in the energy that scattered outwards. They howled in agony and sorrow as they spread out in space. Lin Ming's thoughts stirred. He immediately understood that these remnant souls had all been imprisoned by the divine chains of order. Within the divine chains of order, besides the existence of a true divinity's strength, there had also been countless remnant souls supporting them. The good fortune Saint Sovereign had killed countless people in these years, and all of this was done for his great ambitions of swallowing the world. If it weren't for the upcoming apocalyptic calamity, if it weren't for the demon god's tomb master, then the good fortune Saint Sovereign could have been considered an unparalleled character of his era, one filled with an incredible ferocity and ambition. He could have likely ruled over the 33 heavens, and his cultivation might have taken a step further until he reached the boundary of a totem-level abyssal. Unfortunately, if the good fortune Saint Sovereign's current strength was placed in the river of time that had flowed for 100 billion years, then he would simply be a commonplace existence. Compared to the demon god's tomb master, the good fortune Saint Sovereign wasn't any more powerful than those numerous ancient demon emperors sealed in the Emperor Bone Sea. As Lin Ming was breaking into the 8th Tao Palace of the 9 stars of the Tao Palace, as he was shattering the divine chains of order, far off in a distant universe, within the azure forbidden land hidden in the ruins of the primal god race, Xiang Mei walked above the wilderness, clothed in black. The key to the forbidden land was the chain of calamity, and up until now it had been in the hands of the current leader of the primal god race, Daiwahen. Lin Ming borrowed his key, and with his understandings of the Azura laws, it wasn't difficult for him to open the Azura Forbidden Land. Xiang Mei walked into the Azura Forbidden Land alone. She felt as if she had walked into an ancient tomb. The great earth was barren and the sun above her was gloomy and dim, as if the world was shrouded in eternal dusk. Without any surprises, this world would be destroyed before long. Xiang Mei never expected that the Azura Forbidden Land would be such a place. She quietly pressed forwards and found stone tablets buried underground. These stone tablets were mottled with time, many of their inscriptions ruined over the years. Looking up, she could see thick layers of clouds gathered overhead. They were heavy and dark, blocking out the light. Xiang Mei shook her head. She continued forwards. What she searched for was the cold ice mirror that Lin Ming spoke of. According to what Lin Ming said, there seemed to be a wisp of remnant soul from her past life contained within. She wanted to personally look upon her past life and find out some things. Perhaps she would find out why the Soul Emperor had expended so much time and effort to control her and raise her. But at this time, Xiang Mei heard a sudden voice, one that gently summoned her. This sound was a little intimate and a little familiar, as if buried in the depths of her memories so that she couldn't remember who it was. This voice was faint, but Xiang Mei could clearly hear it. It was completely different from her own voice. Who is it? Xiang Mei paused her step. Chapter 22:11, The Soul Emperor Emerges. As Xiang Mei's steps came to a halt, that voice disappeared, as if it had never appeared at all. However, Xiang Mei knew that this couldn't have been an illusion. She closed her eyes, quietly sensing the origin of that voice. After a long moment of silence, that summoning call appeared once more. It was still weak, but this time, Xiang Mei was able to keenly sense which direction it came from. With some anticipation, with some unease, with some fear, Xiang Mei silently walked forwards. She passed through a graveyard and finally arrived atop a vast field of ice. The cold energy was rich atop this field of ice, and snow billowed in the wind. This cold energy came from the strength of laws, and Xiang Mei felt that these laws were somewhat familiar. This was because she also cultivated the ice laws, and her laws seemed to be interlinked in many places to the laws in the Azura Forbidden Land, as if they came from the same origins. Xiang Mei remained pensive. Then, atop this field of ice, she saw a giant rift, a valley of ice. And below this rift great waves rolled and tumbled. This was an icy river. Although the river waters hadn't frozen, the freezing chill in the air was countless times colder than the frost of the mortal world. However, Xiang Mei was someone who cultivated the ice laws to the extreme. In such an environment, not only did she not think it was too cold, but she actually felt somewhat comfortable. She walked down this ice rift for a long time. Then, at the end of this rift, she could see the smooth, ice-like surface of a giant mirror. This ice mirror towered into the clouds. The light blue surface faced Xiang Mei, reflecting the entire world upon it. It seemed that within this cold ice, there was another world. Xiang Mei understood that this great piece of ice was the cold ice mirror mentioned by Lin Ming. And it seemed that a wisp of remnant soul from her past life was within the cold ice mirror. Xiang Mei used a long period of time to slowly walk in front of the cold ice mirror. As she looked into it, she saw winds and ice obscuring everything. Is it here? Xiang Mei softly thought out loud as she stood before the cold ice mirror for a long time. Her only reply was silence. Xiang Mei patiently waited for several dozen breaths of time. Then, on the surface of the cold ice mirror, light ripples suddenly appeared. A gentle and deep voice, one that had slumbered for unknown billions of years, suddenly woke up and echoed in Xiang Mei's ears. My child, you've come. Xiang Mei's heart trembled. This voice had been that faint call which summoned her. Feeling it near, there was an inexplicable kindness and familiarity, as if it came from somewhere in the deepest parts of her soul. This sort of feeling was completely unlike her past life. You are, Xiang Mei's voice quivered. I am your last life's mother. Mother? Xiang Mei shook, like she had been zapped by lightning. Whether it was a father or mother, these were extremely distant matters to Xiang Mei. Even when she was in the demon god's tomb where she experienced the memories of her past life, she rarely had memories of her parents. In her childhood, what she knew of were struggles, tribulations, slaughter. There was likely only a single reason for this. That was because when she was a child, she rarely came into contact with her father and mother. But today, the mother of Xiang Mei's past life had appeared. This was a bloodline connection, a communion that caused her soul to beat. Unknowingly, tears fell down her eyes. Her mother was actually in the Azura Forbidden Land. Xiang Mei could feel that her mother had already died. All that was left was a wisp of her remnant soul. Xiang Mei knelt down and silently bowed. Originally, Xiang Mei had taken the peak of martial arts as the goal she would chase after all her life. She never sought out her own parents, but she didn't think she had a father or mother. In fact, to the Shang Mei of that time, kinship, family, those ideals were nothing but floating clouds in her eyes. Moreover, she never had family, so she never knew what that felt like. She didn't even have friends. Those she recognized were only those of the same sect or race, as well as the sole emperor who passed down orders to her. But during the long flow of time, Shang Mei's character underwent subtle changes. This was particularly true for when she gave birth to Zhou Er. It was at that time she first realized what it was like to have another person in her life whose life she valued more than her own. It was also at that time she understood the significance of family. But, when she finally became aware of this meaning, she discovered that her father and mother had already perished and all that was left over of them were their remnant souls. "Child, rise." That gentle voice reverberated in Shang Mei's ears once more. Shang Mei bowed again before standing up and stepping into the world of the cold ice mirror. In this world, she could slowly sense the existence of her mother. This was a light feeling of blended bloodlines that flowed through all directions of the cold ice mirror's world. She suddenly understood what this was. "Mother, your remnant soul is the artifact spirit of the cold ice mirror?" "Yes, this is a spirit treasure refined by Azura. I have already become used to being in here." This gentle voice was continuously weak and faint. Shang Mei realized that her mother's remnant soul would not be like those in the Emperor Bone Sea, remaining in a state of everlasting perpetuity. There would be a day when her mother's remnant soul would become so weak that it would eventually dissipate into the void. This left Shang Mei's heart aching. She could guess what had happened. 10 billion years ago, the Azura Road Master couldn't bear to see her mother vanish into nothingness. Thus, he had protected her mother's remnant soul within the cold ice mirror. But this also meant that her mother had withstood 10 billion years of loneliness here. Of course, there might have been some people who accompanied her. Shang Mei had a feeling in her heart. She turned and saw that 1,000 feet away, on a glacier, a blue-clothed woman wearing a veil was silently standing. Cold winds swayed about her and her black hair danced in the wind. The feeling she gave off was like that of an ice lotus blooming atop a snowy mountain, untainted by mortal hands. Although this woman wore a veil, Shang Mei could instantly confirm something: this was her past self. It was like staring at the mirror, both reflecting each other. Shang Mei wasn't sure what to say. Her mind was left in chaos. In truth, Shang Mei was a complete self born from her 10th life. But, because of some unknown reasons, she had been severed from her first 9 lives. There were many riddles in her mind as well as many doubts. If possible, Shang Mei didn't want to bother with these things. What she wanted the most was to break away from the turmoil of the world with Lin Ming, bringing Zhou Er with them. Although they couldn't experience a life of eternal happiness, it would still be a long, happy, and simple life. However, as for her past life, Shang Mei in truth didn't want to fuse back together with her previous personality. She just wanted to remain the pure her that she was. However, there were many things in life that couldn't be just because she hoped for them. Destiny was like a great wheel. Whether or not one was prepared for it, whether or not one could withstand it, it would still come rolling towards you. Just like the present. As Shang Mei was lost in thought, she suddenly felt a stabbing pain in her chest. Her face instantly paled. A cold sweat began to fall down from her forehead. An inexplicable racing of her heart left her feeling anxious. It was at this time that Shang Mei's mother discovered something strange occurring to Shang Mei. She asked with worry, "My child, what is wrong? Have you been injured?" Shang Mei gasped for breath, a hand pressed against her chest. I don't know, suddenly feel anxious, as if I can't catch my breath." This feeling came suddenly and inexplicably. It left dark clouds hovering over Shang Mei's heart. At this time, across unknown layers of time and space, in the vast chaos, there was a sea that extended outwards for countless miles. For there to be a sea in the starry skies was simply inconceivable. And this sea was filthy and yellow, with innumerable bones floating within. Faintly, one could hear the bitter cries of souls in the sea breeze, agonized wails that left one feeling dread and apprehension. At some unknown time, atop the originally calm sea surface, a storm suddenly rose up. The storm grew larger and larger, and the seawater was like two waterfalls rising into the air. Countless skeletons were smashed apart by the turbulent sea waves. And in this raging sea, a youth appeared, stepping through the void as he emerged from the sea waters. He had long hair as white as snow and a face that was paper white. He slowly rose upwards until he flew 100,000 feet into the air. Then, he looked at the sea and the starry skies and casually waved his hand. The vast and limitless sea began to rapidly shrink. From millions of miles, to hundreds of thousands of miles, to thousands of miles, to hundreds of miles, to several feet, to several inches, and finally it shrank into a single drop of water. This drop of water flew into the pupil of the white-haired youth's eye, moistening it like a single tear. However, after this youth's eye was moistened with this drop of water, it still remained as old and dirty as before, emitting the death energy that only a corpse would have. The great sea that contained endless bones had turned into a single water drop and then fused into a youth's eye. Anyone who saw this would feel their scalp tingle with dread. The youth fell deep into thought. He looked into the distant starry skies, a happy expression on his face. But this happy smile caused one to feel an inexplicable sense of fear. I never thought that there would be some people so impatiently wishing to see me. The youth spoke out loud. He stepped up into the void, as if there were invisible stairs that only he could see. Like this, his figure submerged into the void, sinking in silently and leaving behind only light spatial ripples. Chapter 22:12 Crisis. Within the wild universe, not only were there many star clusters with complicated terrains, but there were also many areas of space that were twisted up, making them nearly impossible to probe. This was a place deep in the wild universe, in a world isolated from the outside. This world wasn't large. It was only several hundred miles wide and shined as if it were a bright spring day. The sounds of tinkling water from spirit springs filled the air. On the lush green grass, cute little rabbits ran around and mischievous fawns raced about. A girl dressed in flowery clothes rode a winged unicorn. She galloped out from a forest, speeding along the plains, her melodious laugh ringing about like silver bells. "Big brother, teach me the body transformation technique tomorrow," the girl shouted from afar. She was Jor. As she spoke, she hugged the winged unicorn's neck and leapt off. The big brother she spoke to was Lin Huang. At this time Lin Huang was training his spear. His actions were focused and meticulous. Shwa! The winged unicorn reared upwards, its hooves raised high up into the air before being brought crashing back down. Bits of fragrant green grass flew up, some falling on Lin Huang's spear and some falling on his face. But he didn't seem affected at all. Jor flipped over and landed at Lin Huang's side. She could see that Lin Huang wasn't looking at her and couldn't help but smile. She slapped a palm on the shaft of Lin Huang's spear, but the spear shaft had Lin Huang's true essence poured into it, so it remained like an iron statue, motionless. "I must say, big brother, even daddy says that we can relax for a year, so how come you are still training here?" This small world was a hidden one that was carefully chosen by Lin Ming. Lin Ming spent a great deal of time and effort to lay down sufficient array formations to completely seal up this entire world. Even if a peak true divinity powerhouse were to probe the surrounding starry skies with their sense, they still wouldn't be able to discover anything. Now, besides Shang Mei, Mu Qianyu, Qin Qingshuan, and Xiao Maxian, Lin Ming's 4 children also lived here. They all lived here, in this world that he had arranged, in order to give his family a chance to settle down and stabilize. He knew that in the near future he would have to fight the Soul Emperor, and he wanted to settle his family in order to avoid them being dragged into that great war. This world was supported with stable enchantments that formed a comprehensive system. It absorbed energy from the universe and was extremely durable. Without Lin Ming personally unraveling the array formations, even if an upper true divinity were to spend an entire day attacking it, they still wouldn't be able to break their way in. In truth, Lin Ming had prepared for the worst possible outcome. If an accident occurred and something happened to him, then his family could stay in this hidden world. At least, there would be a small chance for them to live on. The great calamity was descending upon them all but had yet to arrive. Lin Ming's original intention was to accompany his family for some time and allow them to enjoy the little bit of peace that there was before catastrophe came. But for this short and comfortable period of time, Lin Huang actually spent most of his time training.
Little sister, you are not suited for body transformation.
Lin Huang drew a flower in the air before putting away his spear. At this time, one could see energy gathered around him like two large snakes that were then sucked into his body.
Dual cultivating energy and divine is more than enough for you to walk very far.
Even Father still takes two great cultivation systems as his primary focus, and the third system as an auxiliary.
Aya, brother, you are just so boring. Body transformation just seems so cool.
I have decided later that I will also use a spear as my weapon.
Wait, no, I will use a lance, an ancient war lance, the type that is over 10 feet long. As Joer spoke, she assumed a straight posture.
In her hands, energy of the heavens and earth gathered, forming into the shape of a lance.
This energy lance was 10 feet long.
As she brought it flat before her body, it seemed quite dazzling when combined with her heroic stance.
Lin Huang scratched his head. Sister, training in martial arts is to strengthen yourself, not for playing around. Joer was already left speechless by Lin Huang.
She felt that it was just far too difficult to communicate with this big brother Lin Huang, and it was instead easier to get along with her second brother. However, her second brother didn't seem to enjoy practicing martial arts as much. In truth, her second brother was only around 2,000 years of age, and it would be hard for him to play any role in the upcoming calamity. Let alone her second brother, even her eldest brother Lin Huang would find it impossible to help their father fight against the Soul Emperor.
Second brother is fishing with Ani Xian. Let's go and take a look. Daddy is something, huh?
He said that he would accompany us for a few years, but we haven't even seen his shadow these past days.
I wonder just what he's been up to.
Joer was a particularly talkative child. Perhaps it was because she had grown up in the stuffy and quiet demon god's tomb, but even when faced with this Lin Huang that didn't respond much, she still chattered on nonstop.
Lin Huang shook his head.
He followed his little sister. They passed through a hillside and came to a small lake that rippled with clear blue water. The waters within this lake were all from spirit springs. If a mortal were to drink a single drop, they could prolong their life for 100 years. All of this had been arranged by Xiao Ma Xian, and Lin Ming's entire family had lived here in this independent world for 3.5 years already. Lin Ming said that he would live in this small world for 5 years. Then, he would leave to go into seclusion alone, perceiving the laws and impacting towards a higher boundary. To the current Lin Ming, in a situation where he didn't experience a great lucky chance and only bitterly trained, he wouldn't be able to increase his strength much in 5 years.
When a bowstring was always strung taut, it would eventually snap. To always be tensed was not necessarily a good thing. To calm down, slow down, and allow oneself to relax before returning to train again, this might allow one to cultivate even better than before. Thus, Lin Ming used this time to accompany his family. And most importantly, he didn't know if he would have the chance to do so in the future. With the great battle looming in the horizon, Lin Ming always felt restless. As they arrived at the lakeside, Joer called, "Second brother. Auntie Xian. What are we eating for lunch today?" When a martial artist reached the Xiantian realm, they could already ward off hunger. At this time, they could absorb heaven and earth origin energy or take pills to maintain their lives. Lin Ming's entire family was naturally capable of warding off hunger. But, when his family came together, they liked to prepare food and eat together. There was a certain harmony and subtle joy in this. Of course, the foods that Lin Ming's family ate were all top spirit foods, not much worse off when compared to transcendent divine pills.
and Zhou particularly loved the food that Qin Xingxuan prepared. But, as she shouted out loud, her footsteps came to a pause. She looked at the distant lake with doubt. She could feel a strange aura. This was a light death energy. The death energy entered into the small lake that had been filled with life and overflowing with spiritual power. The lake was polluted, and even the green grass around it began to wither. On the lakeside, a white-clothed youth was sitting on a large stone, his back facing Zhou and Lin Huang. He grasped a fishing pole of green bamboo. As the fishing line fell into the water, it caused a circle of ripples to spread out. Zhou held her breath. From afar, she had not seen this person, but as she approached, he had appeared like ghosts and gods. This sort of feeling was as if he had always been here, but she had simply never discovered him. It was clear that this wasn't the back of her second brother. Zhou's heart tightened. Lin Ming had never revealed the location of this world to anyone. Besides her mother Shang Mei, who could locate this place due to the link between their souls, as well as their auntie Mo Eversnow, who occasionally visited, there was never anyone else who came. And now this person had appeared from nowhere, their entire body overflowing with killing intent. Moreover, their father wasn't here and also seemed to have no knowledge of this. How could Zhou not be panicked? This person didn't seem like any human Empyrean. In fact, he didn't even seem human at all. Beside Zhou, Lin Huang had already taken hold of his spear to face this great enemy. As for Zhou, although she held onto her spatial ring, she never planned to take out her weapon. She could faintly feel that this person had come by themselves. For someone to be able to quietly penetrate past their father's enchantments without notice, how powerful should they be? She didn't dare to imagine, but she knew that this person was someone that neither she nor Lin Huang could deal with. She quietly took out a sound-transmitting talisman and prepared to send Lin Ming a message. Only if Lin Ming arrived here was there a chance to deal with this stranger. Zhou could feel her palms wet with sweat. But, when she pulled out the sound-transmitting talisman, that strange back remained as motionless as before. This caused her heart to sink. This other person absolutely realized her own little actions and yet didn't care at all, simply remaining there like a rock. This was proof that he simply didn't fear their father at all. Chapter 22:13 Lin Ming vs. the Soul Emperor. Zhou, come here. As Zhou was dripping with a cold sweat, unsure of what to do, a deep and dignified voice sounded out from behind her. Zhou trembled. This was her father's voice. Although this unknown person had quietly passed through their enchantments, their father had discovered it afterwards. Or, there was a possibility that this stranger had allowed their father to discover him. No matter what happened, Zhou knew with absolute clarity that this was an extremely critical situation. This was because she could see how tense her father was, how solemn his expression was, and she could even see beads of sweat beginning to form on his forehead. Zhou's heart skipped a beat. In her eyes, her father was a near omnipotent existence. But now there was sweat forming on his forehead. Father! Lin Huang gripped his spear, his breath caught in his throat. You come too! Lin Ming's tone brooked no disobedience. In this situation, the role Lin Huang could play was nearly negligible. And at this time, from not too far away, two people were walking towards this area. One of them was a gentle-looking woman. She wore a light yellow dress and had a delicate bamboo basket hanging on her arm. This bamboo basket was filled with little mushrooms that had been bred in this small world. By her side was a handsome youth. He had elegant clothes and a charming appearance. The outline of his face was faintly similar to Lin Ming's, but they possessed two completely different styles. They were Qin Xingxuan and Qin Xingxuan's son, the second brother that Zhou spoke of, Lin Xian. The two of them were originally chatting and laughing, but as they saw the scene by the lake, their steps came to a standstill. Qin Xingxuan looked at Lin Ming and the white-clothed youth with wide eyes. Shock flashed in her pupils. She and Lin Xian had just been at the lakeside relaxing, and afterwards had decided to pick some mushrooms to prepare some mushroom soup for later. But now they had returned to the scene before them. Looking at Lin Ming and Lin Huang's actions, they understood that this was an enemy invasion.
Xingxuan, come here.
Lin Ming's voice was low and deep. Just before he appeared, he had been with Mu Qianyu, Xiaomao Xian, and his daughter Lin Yu. He had received them all into the Grand Mist Spirit Bead space. Now, he planned to bring Qin Xingxuan and the others into the space within the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. He was well aware that if the Soul Emperor were to attack at this time, those here would die a horrible and violent death. It was because of this that his forehead was wet with sweat. His sense was completely focused on the Soul Emperor's every action and movement. If his family were to be killed by the Soul Emperor, he couldn't imagine just what the consequences would be. Father, he is. Jiu'er had already guessed who this stranger was. In this universe, if there was a person that could cause Lin Ming to be so tense and worried, there was only a single one. Before Jiu'er finished speaking, a flash of light covered her field of vision. She felt a moment of dizziness as she was sucked into a strange space. Lin Ming and the Soul Emperor had vanished. Lin Huang, Qin Xingxuan, and Lin Xian arrived in this strange space with Jiu'er. This is the Spirit Bead space. Lin Huang dual cultivated essence and energy. Lin Ming had once brought Lin Huang into the Grand Mist Spirit Bead to cultivate, so he was able to recognize this space. Father has transferred us into the Spirit Bead space, but he remains outside, facing the great enemy. Lin Huang clenched his fists together. At this time, he saw that within the Spirit Bead space, there was also Mu Qianyu, Xiaomao Xian, and Lin Yu. Mother! Lin Huang worriedly shouted out. What happened? Xiaomao Xian and Mu Qianyu were unclear as to what had occurred outside. They were originally together with Lin Ming, but Lin Ming's complexion suddenly changed and he instantly placed them into the Spirit Bead space. Before much time passed, Lin Huang, Qin Xingxuan, and everyone else also joined them. Xiaomao Xian naturally realized that this was most likely because danger had arrived. Soul Emperor. I fear that the Soul Emperor has come. Jiu'er muttered, worry etched across her features. Her words caused everyone's hearts to sink. Soul Emperor, how could this be? Isn't there still a long time before he emerges from seclusion? Xiaomao Xian recalled that Lin Ming once said the Soul Emperor would have to go into seclusion for tens of thousands of years. But from that point, only 9,000 or so years had passed. This was the reason why Lin Ming was willing to make some time to accompany his family. If the Soul Emperor had already left seclusion, then Lin Ming would never have dared to be together with his family. Otherwise, if the Soul Emperor were to suddenly appear out of nowhere, then his entire family would be sucked into the chaos. I have no idea. Jiu'er shook her head. She began to worry over her mother Shang Mei. Her mother had entered the Azura Forbidden Land and still hadn't returned. Now that the Soul Emperor had appeared, would her mother be safe? On the lakeside, the Soul Emperor still sat upon a rock, fishing. His clothes were as white as snow, like a hermit who had secluded himself in the mountains. From the point that Jiu'er and Lin Huang had discovered the Soul Emperor, to when Lin Ming had appeared, the Soul Emperor still hadn't moved. Lin Ming slowly reached out a hand. The black dragon spear seemed to have a life of its own as it appeared in Lin Ming's grasp. The Soul Emperor's back faced Lin Ming. He gently laid down the fishing pole and stood up. The moment he rose, the life-filled lake seemed to rapidly lose all vitality, with him at the center. The green grass withered, the flowers crumbled. The originally deep blue waters turned muddy and yellow. The corpses of spirit fish floated to the surface of the water as the entire lake turned into a lake of death. Do you find it strange that I didn't do anything to your family? The Soul Emperor turned around and looked at Lin Ming. He still had the appearance of a sickly youth near death. The only difference from before was that the filthiness and death in his eyes had diminished by the tiniest bit. It's because you believe that victory is already in your hands. Lin Ming stared at the Soul Emperor. The Soul Emperor smiled. The reason I came is not because I want to use your family to force you to do something, nor do I wish to take you as my servant. Thus, there is no need for me to provoke you, because all I wish to do is destroy you." The Soul Emperor casually stated that he would take Lin Ming's life. This sort of tone and feeling was as if he were trading goods with Lin Ming.
"But you are not the complete form of the demon god's tomb master. Do you think you have the strength to kill me?" Killing intent began to surge off of Lin Ming, gradually condensing towards him. Even the power within the force field enchantments that guarded this world was taken back by Lin Ming. "You guessed right. My main body is still in the dark abyss, and I cannot recover it," the Soul Emperor said, not denying this. "Not only do you not have your complete form, but you haven't finished your seclusion. Your soul is not yet immortal," Lin Ming said, his words sharp and deadly. He guessed that the reason the Soul Emperor left seclusion midway was all in order to strangle him before he could grow further. The Soul Emperor thought little of it. He simply smiled. "It seems you have always misunderstood me. My goal is not to refine the eternal soul. Even with the eternal soul, I cannot gain eternal life. The reason I need to go into seclusion for such a long time is in order to have my soul become the heavenly Tao laws of the demon god's tomb and thoroughly control the Emperor Bonzi. Your eternal soul is merely a primer, an opening act for me to do so." To have his soul become the heavenly Tao laws? Lin Ming's heart shook. A human had essence, energy, and divine. They were equivalent to one's flesh and blood, true essence, and soul. Correspondingly, the universe also had its own essence, energy, and divine. They were all creatures and matter in existence, all energy in the universe, and the heavenly Tao laws. The soul of the universe was the heavenly Tao laws. If the Soul Emperor could transform his own soul into the heavenly Tao laws, then he would naturally become immortal. Although I have not completed the final transformation of my soul, I have still completed over half. There is also one final stage remaining, but I can pause this final stage midway to come out and handle some matters that must be completed in advance, for instance, killing you." Lin Ming coldly sneered. "It seems you aren't as confident as you think you are. Do you think you won't be my match 10,000 years from now?" The Soul Emperor laughed out loud, without any sense of denial. "In the great scheme that I have laid out for 100 billion years, I have considered all the people in the world within my calculations, and yet I have actually miscalculated you. In these 100 billion years I have seen countless peerless geniuses, but I never imagined that there would be a genius who could rise to a level that could truly threaten me. And I never would have imagined that on the Skyspill planet, Shang Mei would guarantee your life with some threats and concessions. And while I was in seclusion, in a situation where you were nothing but a dried-up lamp on the verge of death, you actually managed to survive and become reborn, even cultivating yourself back to the peak. You have indeed given me many surprises. But I no longer wish to be surprised again, so I have personally come to kill you off." While the Soul Emperor spoke, a single teardrop rolled out from one of his filthy eyes. As this teardrop left the Soul Emperor's eye, it crazily expanded, turning into a raging flood that overwhelmed Lin Ming's small world. Everything in the world was sucked into this flood. This water was like acid, corroding the life force of anything it touched. Although I do not have my complete form, I am not someone you can defeat. Now, let me see just how much you've grown these past years." As the Soul Emperor spoke, the waters had already filled up the entire small world. With a loud explosion, the enchantments that Lin Ming had laid down in this world, all of the concealing array formations, completely shattered. These were enchantments that not even an upper true divinity could destroy if they put in all their strength. Yet in front of the Soul Emperor, they were actually so weak and fragile. Chapter 22:14, The Power of the Soul Emperor. Who? 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 Souls cried and demons wept. The sea of the Soul Emperor's terror was flooded with countless suffering souls and bones. Lin Ming felt the energy within his body turn stagnant and his strength be suppressed by a great deal. There was even a feeling of tight breathlessness in his chest. It was clear that this sea was the Soul Emperor's force field domain. This is the sea of suffering. Those who enter have no way to leave, and today, you will die here. As the Soul Emperor spoke, he lifted a finger and pointed it outwards. His skin was as pale as paper, and one could even see the blood vessels beneath. However, a normal man's blood vessels were blue, but the Soul Emperor's were gray, as if the blood that flowed within them was also filled with death. This finger amplified to infinite proportions in Lin Ming's eyes. He was simply unable to resist, unable to dodge. The spiral fingerprint was clearly visible, each circle like a vortex. Because the Soul Emperor's finger seemed as large as the heavens, each circular fingerprint was like a ring-shaped mountain range. Lin Ming's eyes shot open and he grasped the black dragon spear in his hands. He felt that in his entire life he had never encountered such a terrifying attack before. The finger possessed enough pressure to break down the skies. Lin Ming exploded in a thunderous roar as strength erupted within him to the limits. Around him, 8 Dao palaces opened and the 2 highest laws also fused into his inner world. The Azura blood began to burn. Lin Ming aimed at the center of that giant finger and thrust out his spear. Spearlight as thick as a mountain hurtled forth, like a pillar that lifted the heavens. However, facing that giant finger, even the mighty spearlight was nothing but a tiny needle that crashed into it. Gotcha! Spearlight shattered. However, even though the giant finger was also pierced through, it continued to crush down as before. Bang! With Lin Ming as the center, the entire cosmos seemed to fall down. A massive fingerprint formed in the endless void. Lin Ming coughed out as his joints emitted loud cracking sounds. His bones broke all over, his organs shattered, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. He was sent flying backwards. Like a bag of blood that had been ripped open, blood rained down. So strong. Lin Ming's pupils shrank. This was the first time he experienced the strength of the demon god's tomb master, and this was only his avatar. If the avatar was so horrifying, just what would the complete form of the demon god's tomb master be like? Lin Ming held his breath, revolving the power of divinity and demons in his body. His broken bones and shattered organs began to rapidly repair. A look of faint surprise flashed in the Soul Emperor's eyes. You seem to have opened the 8th Dao Palace of the 9 stars of the Dao Palace, attained a higher level and rebirthed your body. In addition, you have absorbed a totem-level abyssal into your body. With the 2 forms fused together, this gave you the body of a heavenly demon. Now, your body's tolerance capacity and recovery abilities far surpass those of any martial artist on the same level, but how many of my attacks do you think you can withstand? The Soul Emperor said with a smile. His smile caused one to feel a chill creep down their back. Lin Ming was aware that what the Soul Emperor said was true. If he hadn't opened the 8th Dao Palace, allowing the 8 inner hidden gates and 9 stars of the Dao Palace to connect and commune at a higher level and giving his body a qualitative leap upwards, then perhaps the Soul Emperor's attack just now would have sundered him in half. Even if he didn't die, he would have lost most of his life and basically been left helpless. But even like this, with his current condition, he wouldn't be able to withstand many of the Soul Emperor's attacks before exhausting all of his strength. This was because no matter how powerful his regenerative abilities were, if he wanted to recover from severe wounds, he would have to consume a massive amount of energy. And, the more powerful the body, the more energy that would be used. He couldn't allow the Soul Emperor to freely attack him again. Lin Ming bit down on the tip of his tongue and burnt the gate of life's blood essence. The strength from the burning blood essence caused Lin Ming's blood vitality to seethe within his body. He clenched his teeth, his eyes blazing at the Soul Emperor. However, the Soul Emperor merely curved his lips upward slightly. Burning your blood essence? You have opened the gate of life, and if you burn a little bit of blood essence you can still restore yourself. But, this will only make your strength pass away that much faster, and bring you nearer to death that much quicker. Let me help you along. This time, the Soul Emperor stretched out his entire palm. This palm seemed to hold a great universe as it came crashing down upon Lin Ming. At this time, Lin Ming's strength had already been gathered to the limit.
He cried out into the heavens, his mortal body nearly fusing together with the black dragon spear.
Spear and man as one.
Wah! Lin Ming's body and the black dragon spear turned into a divine dragon that danced through the air. The divine dragon roared as it shot towards the Soul Emperor's palm. However, no matter how mighty and majestic the divine dragon was, in front of this hand that seemed to command the heavens and earth, it was actually no different from a bug. The divine dragon was about to be pinched by the hand. Lin Ming roared out, burning another 10% of his blood essence. Ha! A loud cry broke through the skies. In this crucial moment, Lin Ming's speed rapidly rose up once more and he forcefully pushed out from between the fingers of that giant hand.
Rumble, rumble, rumble.
The heavens and earth collapsed and stars were torn apart. In the surrounding trillion miles, the meteorite belt turned into powder. The countless meteorites and asteroids disintegrated to dust. The explosive shockwave swept through the entire galaxy. This feeling was as if the galaxy itself had been cut in half. What is that? A trillion miles away, several human world kings saw the apocalyptic scene occurring before them. Is that the supernova of a superstar? A world king mumbled, shocked. They were stationed in this part of the galaxy but didn't know that Lin Ming's hidden world was within their guarding area. No, this is two super existences fighting. A world king said, his complexion grim. Hurry and send the news, immediately informed Senior Emperor Sakya.
Yes. You actually managed to escape my palm at the last moment?
The Soul Emperor watched as Lin Ming ran about from between the creases of his fingers, hurtling towards him without stop. A flash of surprise appeared in his filthy eyes. My attack seems to have stimulated the potential within your body. Still, nothing has changed. The Soul Emperor wanted to take back his hand and attack once more. But at this time, the rapidly soaring Lin Ming changed his attack trajectory. From hurtling straight towards the Soul Emperor, he forcefully turned himself a sharp 90 degrees. Ca. The Soul Emperor's Sea of Suffering force field was torn apart by Lin Ming without end. The Sea of Suffering didn't hinder the Soul Emperor's strength and attacks, but it would suppress Lin Ming. However, at this time, with Lin Ming fused together with his spear as one, this force field was torn open by him instead. With Lin Ming's body as the center, seawater curled up into a storm as he opened up a whirlpool passage.
You want to flee? An intelligent decision.
A playful look crossed the Soul Emperor's features. Lin Ming's strike was not aimed to injure him but to break through the Sea of Suffering and escape. If one faced an enemy that far exceeded themselves, and knew perfectly well that fighting the enemy meant certain death, then continuing to fight was not bravery but stupidity. Moreover, Lin Ming also had his family with him right now. He didn't want his family to be buried with him. Bang! The boundaries to the Sea of Suffering were ripped open. Lin Ming overdrew his blood vitality. With the massive backlash of doing so, he spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Lin Ming ignored his injuries and flew non-stop into the depths of the universe. He ripped open a space channel and shuttled through the void. In a battle between martial artists, one only needed to be slightly stronger to defeat someone else. But to kill the other party, that was actually far more difficult. In particular, if the other party was attempting to escape with all their might. Since Lin Ming knew he couldn't contend with the Soul Emperor, he chose to temporarily run away. You think you can escape? The moment that Lin Ming broke into the void, an ancient rune flashed out from between the Soul Emperor's eyebrows. This was a spirit mark, it directly fell upon Lin Ming's body. In the past, Lin Ming had already suffered enough losses and experienced enough pain thanks to a true divinity mark. Now, another mark appeared on his body. Lin Ming's thoughts darkened. He could feel the mark that stuck onto his body and knew what he faced now was a great life and death crisis. He seemed to have returned to the time when he was being chased down by soaring Feather God King. No matter how much he tore through space and transferred through the void, the Soul Emperor still followed tightly behind.
Chapter 22:15 Moth to the Flame. Transferring through the void again and again, the Soul Emperor's true divinity mark was no different from a life-reaping symbol. With Lin Ming's strength, if he were given enough time, then he could erase it. But now the Soul Emperor would never give him this time. Lin Ming didn't know how long he spent racing through the starry skies. From the edges of the wild universe, he flew towards the central region. At this time, just as Lin Ming underwent another Great Void transfer and left the space channel, he could see that not too far away there was a planet. This planet was filled with life and beautiful scenery. There were some people who lived simple farming lives, and there were also martial artists who had gathered to form small sections. This was a common human planet in the wild universe. 2,000 years ago, the mortals of humanity had already begun to spread out and develop throughout the wild universe. Afterwards, the Saint Sovereign left seclusion, but because there weren't many Saint Empyreans who rejoined the war effort, the Saints no longer had the ability to engage in a large-scale slaughter and encirclement like they did in the past. Because of this, the common people of humanity weren't much affected. Just as Lin Ming saw this planet of the human race, and before he could pass through the void again, he could see that in the skies above, a giant hand came crashing down, rolling over the planet. Lin Ming's heartbeat nearly came to a stop. Without any suspense, the planet blew apart, turning into endless stones. A massive energy storm formed which turned the countless lives on the planet into nothing but space dust. This was the hand of the Soul Emperor. Lin Ming's mind was filled with pure hatred. Just like that, all life on an entire planet had been snuffed out, no different from someone stepping on a crowd of ants. And presently he didn't have the ability to defeat the Soul Emperor. He could only grit his teeth and continue escaping. But at this time, from that crushed planet, endless ghosts and suffering souls flew out. From the summoning powers of the Soul Emperor, these souls weren't destroyed in the energy storm but began to rapidly gather together in a range of tens of thousands of miles. Everything within Lin Ming's field of vision was flooded with a suffocating dark gray. Death energy rose up, fusing into space. The space channel that Lin Ming began to tear open seemed to be caught in a swamp, and he was unable to open it any further. Lin Ming's heart sank. The Soul Emperor had fused this death energy into the void of the universe, changing the nature of space itself so that it was impossible to undergo a Great Void transfer in this area. If he wanted to continue shuttling through space, he would need to break past this domain. Lin Ming didn't even give it a thought. He no longer tried to transfer through space and instead bit down on the tip of his tongue, erupting with the limit of speed and strength, wanting to rush out from the domain. But at this time, the Soul Emperor's overwhelming pressure came crashing down over Lin Ming. You cannot escape. The Soul Emperor's palm came slapping down, striking Lin Ming as he tried to flee. The slap exploded behind Lin Ming and a shockwave rushed out like landslides and tsunamis. Lin Ming was caught in the waves. Like an arrow shot down by a bird, he began tumbling away. His original speed and savage momentum had been scattered by the Soul Emperor. With it, raging death energy gathered towards Lin Ming, causing him to feel like he fell into a mire. The Soul Emperor thrust out a finger. This finger didn't fall onto Lin Ming, but pointed somewhere in the void. The void began to twist, and beneath the strength of the Soul Emperor, a space gate opened. Woo! 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 Mournful roars echoed from the space gate. 4 black Rakshasas walked out. These 4 Rakshasas were formed from remnant souls, their bodies overflowed with the ancient aura of kings. This sort of aura wasn't something that could be possessed by ordinarily refined soul puppets, but was an aura that only genuinely supreme powerhouses could have, true rulers of the world. This meant that these 4 Rakshasas weren't made from ordinary remnant souls, but from ancient god kings who emerged from the 33 heavens billions of years ago. After they died, their souls had been refined by the Soul Emperor and they became his soul puppets. Your mortal body is formidable. You've done everything in your power and can even withstand several of my attacks. However, I am done waiting. Explode.
The Soul Emperor's gaze was indifferent. He flicked his finger and the four Rakshasas hurtled towards Lin Ming.
At the same time, the Soul Emperor thrust out a palm at Lin Ming. A black hand appeared, so large so it could hold a planet. This hand emitted infinite death energy as it came smashing down onto Lin Ming. As for those four Rakshasas, they revolved their energies to their limits. Their eyes turned red and cracks began to run over their bodies from the terrifying percolation of energy in them. Recalling the word explode that the Soul Emperor had just said, Lin Ming understood that these four Rakshasas wanted to rush over and explode on him. The Soul Emperor didn't plan on using the Rakshasas to divert his attention, but to blow him up instead. Lin Ming was originally able to rely upon his deep abilities to fight back as he ran away, delaying the Soul Emperor as long as possible. But, if the Soul Emperor were to discard these four Rakshasa puppets and blow them up and also attack himself at the same time, then it would be impossible for Lin Ming to resist this attack. And to the Soul Emperor, these four Rakshasa puppets that were formed from ancient god kings weren't anything at all. The Soul Emperor's attack blocked all directions that Lin Ming could evade in. The black hand came crashing down and the four Rakshasas blocked all directions. With this, Lin Ming had been placed in a great life and death crisis. In this critical moment, Lin Ming smashed a fist into his own chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood essence and burned it without hesitation. A black bead appeared in front of him. It completely absorbed all the burning blood essence and emitted a blood-red brilliance. Lin Ming had used the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, and even allowed it to drink its fill of his blood essence. Lin Ming had opened the gate of life, and even if he burned blood essence he could still restore it. But, there was actually a limit to burning his blood essence. If he burned over 30% of his blood essence then he would be left weakened for many days. If he burned over 50% of his blood essence then it would cause permanent damage to his body. If he were to burn over 70 to 80% of his blood essence, then this might be a fatal wound. But now Lin Ming could no longer care about such things. Facing the Soul Emperor's attack, if he didn't burn his blood essence then he would undoubtedly die. Lin Ming attacked. The 9 stars of the Dao Palace appeared behind him and the strength of his demon avatar fused into his true self. Scales enveloped Lin Ming's body and fierce bone spikes drilled out from his elbows. Lin Ming roared out aloud, and together with the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, he hurtled forwards, turning into a meteor that shot towards the Soul Emperor's black hand. Lin Ming knew that even the combined force of the 4 exploding Rakshasas couldn't compare to the might of the Soul Emperor's palm. If he were to be struck by this palm then he would immediately disintegrate into dust and ashes. Bang! With a deep explosion, the black hand was forcefully pierced through by Lin Ming. But, Lin Ming's recently regenerated body broke down once more. His meridians were torn apart and his joints cracked open. As he held his spear, his arms were twisted at a strange angle and bones jutted out from his flesh and blood. This was a completely disparate battle. Facing the Soul Emperor, even though he was only an avatar of his true form, Lin Ming still wasn't able to resist him. Lin Ming was sent flying backwards. And at this time, the 4 Rakshasas flew towards him. Lin Ming's thoughts sank, he could feel rising despair. If Lin Ming was in his peak state and stimulated his protective power of divinity and demons to the limit, then he could forcefully withstand these 4 exploding Rakshasas. But now, his strength was exhausted, his organs broken, and he was wounded all over. He was barely able to pour energy into his shattered meridians and his crushed skeleton wasn't able to mobilize the power of his mortal body. He was nearly defenseless, and in this completely spent condition, he could only stare helplessly on as these 4 Rakshasas were about to explode around him. This was a strike he absolutely could not withstand. Without a single pause, the 4 Rakshasas revolved their energies to their limits and then exploded together. Bang! It was like 4 suns erupting. A blinding divine light swallowed everything. In that violent storm of energy, Lin Ming blinked as a shield of white energy shrouded his body. A warm feeling covered him, energizing his body that was nearly completely broken down,
and seemed to even be accelerating his healing. But such a situation left Lin Ming's mind tensed. Who? Although the four Rakshasas exploding together was still inferior to the Soul Emperor's strike, if one had to look throughout the entire 33 heavens, who could withstand it? The light faded away. A white figure hovered in front of Lin Ming, guarding him. She was the one who had forcefully propped up that protective energy shield just now. She was Divine Dream. At this time, Divine Dream's chest was already dyed completely red with blood. The flexible armor formed from her energy had torn apart. Her arms that supported the protective shield fell down, limp, as the bones in them had already been crushed to pieces. Not just that, but blood streamed out from her eyes, nose, and ears. Her originally star-bright eyes had dimmed and had lost their luster. Divine Dream was the first human to break into true divinity. When Lin Ming returned, she had long since gone into seclusion for 2,000 years to break into middle true divinity. Besides Lin Ming, she was the greatest powerhouse of humanity. And today was her first battle since stepping into middle true divinity. Or perhaps, this couldn't even be called a battle at all, but a moth flying into the flames. Chapter 22:16, Heaven and Man as One. From when Lin Ming first started fighting with the Soul Emperor, the human race headquarters had already obtained news of it. Even though they knew perfectly well that they couldn't play any effective role in Lin Ming's battle, they still couldn't stand idly by and ignore the danger that Lin Ming was in. Even disregarding the fact that Lin Ming had rescued them several times, if Lin Ming died then humanity would soon follow. Lin Ming and the Soul Emperor did not conceal the location of their battle at all. Wherever they went, the earth would shake and the heavens would crumble. It wasn't difficult for human true divinities to use their sense and lock onto the path that Lin Ming fled in and where the Soul Emperor was chasing him. With this, the high-level figures of humanity started to rush towards Lin Ming, and the first one to arrive was naturally the strongest of them all, Divine Dream, who had just left seclusion. Senior Divine Dream. Lin Ming's body flickered and he arrived at the side of Divine Dream and helped support her. After being heavily wounded by the Soul Emperor, Divine Dream couldn't even stand steady. As he watched Divine Dream bleed from her head and her spiritual sea darkening, Lin Ming bit his lips, rage filling his heart. As his life was hanging by a thread, Divine Dream had overdrawn her life in order to block that catastrophe for him. Now, he could feel Divine Dream's life aura rapidly weakening. This left Lin Ming burning with worry. There is actually someone who came to rescue you without a care for their life, and to give you a chance to catch your breath. Since this is the case, let me fulfill your wishes and allow you to die together. As the Soul Emperor spoke, he stretched out his palm. The surface of his palm tore open and a bone staff drilled out from the flesh and blood. The bone staff was 10 feet long and glossy, as if it were made from black agate. This was the Soul Emperor's weapon. The Soul Emperor had the appearance of a youth and wasn't too tall. This bone staff that was hidden in his body was actually a good deal longer than his height. It was genuinely crafted from the bones of the demon god from 100 billion years ago. It had already reached an unimaginably high grade. As the Soul Emperor brandished this bone staff, his aura became far more terrifying. Seeing this weapon and feeling the immense pressure of the Soul Emperor, Divine Dream shivered. This was not a level of strength that a true divinity could contend with. Lin Ming. I will give you the final measure of my strength. Divine Dream struggled to say with a true essence sound transmission. She had already been severely weakened. The difference between her and the Soul Emperor was far too great. In order to block his strike she had to overdraw her blood vitality, and the injuries she sustained in the process were far too deep. She was almost only managing to support herself with her will alone. Now, it was impossible for the strength she had left remaining to pose any threat to the Soul Emperor. The only thing she could do to play a role in this battle was to burn her blood vitality and divine soul and pass that strength on to Lin Ming. With the strength of her divine soul as the conductor, she could pass the last dregs of her power into Lin Ming's body. Then, combined with Lin Ming's 9 stars of the Tao Palace and true divinity strength, he could reach the peak of essence, energy, and divine. With this, he might have a possibility of blocking the Soul Emperor's next attack. But by this time, Lin Ming's eyes had already turned blood red. He was well aware that if Divine Dream were to burn her blood vitality and divine soul in such a state, she would undoubtedly die. Senior Divine Dream, I know that you want to bet everything in order to preserve my life as well as preserve the future of humanity and the 33 heavens. But, I cannot borrow your strength. I do not want others to die for me. Moreover, my body has already been marked by the Soul Emperor's true divinity spirit mark. While I can escape one catastrophe, I cannot escape the second. There is simply no path left for me to retreat. In truth, ever since the first day I stepped onto the road of martial arts, there has never been any retreat for me. In my lifetime I have been defeated, I have fled, I have been schemed against, and once I even fell from the highest mountain peak to the lowest valley and experienced true death. But, I never thought of admitting defeat. If the Soul Emperor wants to kill me, then let me face him. As Lin Ming spoke, he burned his blood vitality without reserve. A horrifying strength rushed through him, so intense that his meridians and mortal body were barely able to withstand it. His skin began to crack apart and tear open from the pressure. But at the same time, Lin Ming's martial arts will rose straight up and then rose again. That invisible martial arts will seem to turn into a peerless spear that pierced into the vastness of the universe. The change occurring within Lin Ming left Divine Dream startled. At this time, the heavily wounded her found it hard to resist the pressure created by Lin Ming's eruption of strength. Bang! With the Soul Emperor at the center, a storm of energy erupted, covering Lin Ming and Divine Dream. This energy storm was only the Soul Emperor's opening move, but this opening move was already able to disintegrate any Empyrean-level martial artist. Beneath the tearing strength of this storm, the severely wounded Divine Dream was naturally unable to resist it. Lin Ming opened up a protective shield of the power of divinity and demons, stimulated his strength to the limit. Strength. Give me strength. More strength. Strength beyond strength. Lin Ming roared in his mind. The demon spine buried in Lin Ming's flesh and blood was pulled out by him. With the support of the Grand Mist Spirit Bead, it was forcefully swallowed into his body. Such a demon god bone would be difficult to digest if it were fused into his flesh and blood, and it would even have side effects. But at this time, Lin Ming couldn't care about such things. The Soul Emperor's complexion changed for the first time. As Lin Ming wildly combusted his blood essence, he could feel that Lin Ming's divine soul had reached an unprecedented peak. This was a transformation that could only occur on the precipice of life and death. The Soul Emperor's expression became several points more dignified. This child cannot be allowed to remain alive. In this battle, the Soul Emperor was able to feel just how terrifying Lin Ming actually was. He had to take advantage of this time to destroy him. The Soul Emperor attacked. The bone staff shot forwards, crashing towards Lin Ming and Divine Dream like the collapse of the world. At this time, Lin Ming lifted his hands and placed the weakened Divine Dream into the Grand Mist Spirit Bead. Lin Ming lifted his arms evenly. A blood-red lotus appeared in his right hand and an azure wheel appeared in his left. These were the two highest laws that Lin Ming cultivated, the Holy Scripture and Heavenly Sutra. Then, Lin Ming brought his hands together. From between his eyebrows, his eternal soul blazed like an inferno, like a blinding sun. With the support of that incredible divine soul, the originally incompatible Holy Scripture and Heavenly Sutra began to thoroughly fuse together at this moment. Lin Ming had already started the initial steps in fusing together the Holy Scripture and Heavenly Sutra in the demon god's tomb. And in order to completely fuse the two together, what he needed was a turning point. And today, Lin Ming fused together the universe of the world and the universe of the body. At this moment, his mortal body, inner world, and divine soul completely fused together with the universe of the 33 heavens. Lin Ming's body was like a star, like all things in existence. The energy in his body was like the origin energy of the universe, and his soul was like the heavenly Tao laws. The strength of the 33 heavens universe flowed towards Lin Ming.
Lin Ming's strength climbed at a maddening pace.
This was no longer just his strength, but strength that came from all lives and all worlds in the 33 heavens.
Lin Ming attacked.
He didn't use the Black Dragon spear again. At this time, his flesh and blood body had turned into a spear, his will was the sharpest spear point. Lin Ming's figure turned into a dazzling beam of light that thrust straight towards the Soul Emperor and collided with that bone staff. With a silent collision, the world lost all color. All that remained was a heaven-destroying divine light that lit up the entire wild universe. Great worlds shattered and rivers of stars were cut apart. In this horrifying impact, Lin Ming's mortal body cracked apart and his arms were nearly reduced to bones. However, the Soul Emperor's body shook and he was thrown hundreds of thousands of miles away.
How is this possible?
The Soul Emperor steadied his body and came to a stop, his features completely frozen. He looked at Lin Ming and then lowered his head. With a dazed expression, he could see a shocking hole in his body. His snow-white robes were dyed crimson with fresh blood. This wound nearly passed through his chest. He couldn't remember just how long it had been since he had received such a heavy wound.
You actually wounded me? The Soul Emperor felt this unbelievable.
He was a beyond divinity existence. And even amongst beyond divinity level powerhouses, he was still an outstanding individual. Now, although he was only an avatar and only had a fraction of his main form's strength, it still wasn't a level that a true divinity could contend with. The Soul Emperor covered his chest. His flesh and blood crept about, wriggling as it tried to regrow. However, this wound contained the strength of the Great Tao laws and was equal to a scar created by the Great Tao. It wouldn't regenerate for a short period of time. Not just that, but the Soul Emperor also felt an agonizing pain rack his spiritual sea. Lin Ming's attack had not only pierced through the Soul Emperor's mortal body but also injured his divine soul. The strength of the Soul Emperor's divine soul far surpassed anyone's in the universe, and yet he had actually been wounded by Lin Ming.
You have really surprised me. But even so, you cannot change your fate.
The Soul Emperor moved forwards one step at a time. At this time, not too far away, Lin Ming had already become a completely blood-drenched person. The arms that held the Grand Mist Spirit Bead had nearly turned into white bones.
Chapter 22:17, Fight as One.
Lin Ming's injuries were far heavier than the Soul Emperor's. He had truly fused together the highest laws and his will had already reached the highest possible peak. But, the problem was that he lacked the strength to display this. Ultimately speaking, in the end, his cultivation was too low and his inner world and mortal body couldn't withstand the burden. That strike just now was only possible with Lin Ming burning his blood vitality and divine soul. But, just how many more times could he burn his blood vitality and divine soul? The Soul Emperor before him was different from the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. In the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's life, he would never have been able to take that final step beyond divinity. But, the Soul Emperor had already accomplished this. Even if they were at the same boundary, the Soul Emperor's strength would far outstrip the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's countless times over. Lin Ming had been able to easily leap over 3 small boundaries to fight the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign. But to leap over several small boundaries to fight the Soul Emperor, that was far, far too difficult. The absolute disparity of boundaries was a gap that couldn't be made up for. It was a flaw that was choking Lin Ming to death. Lin Ming felt his strength fading away and his fires of life beginning to weaken. He didn't plan to run away, because trying to do so was useless. He looked at the Soul Emperor, a humorless smile playing on his lips. Even if you kill me, I will make sure today will be your eternal nightmare. Lin Ming's words were like a curse. The Soul Emperor's eyebrows wrinkled together. A cold light flashed in his filthy eyes. You think you have the ability? The Soul Emperor coldly sneered. But at this time, his smile froze. He turned and looked into the distant starry skies. Others had arrived.
The Soul Emperor's battle with Lin Ming could be called earth-shaking and heaven-sundering. It had caused the entire wild universe to shake. In the meantime, many people had hurried over to catch up to this location. Those that arrived were Emperor Sakya, Great Limitless Buddha, Dark Demon Monarch, Empyrean Vast Universe, and the other powerhouses of humanity. As they saw Lin Ming and the Soul Emperor, their pupils shrank. The Soul Emperor's wounds had already healed by a good half, but Lin Ming was still dripping with blood, a sight that horrified the mind. Even so, Lin Ming still blazed with a brilliant fighting spirit, and blood vitality rushed through his body. His eyes were like those of an Asura from hell, emitting infinite killing intent. The feeling that Lin Ming gave off at this moment was like that of an injured but enraged wild animal. This had been a tragic battle. Emperor Sakya and the others all sucked in a breath of cold air. They hadn't known that the one Lin Ming faced was the Soul Emperor, but as they saw the powerful Lin Ming wounded to such a degree, they had already faintly guessed upon the truth. Perhaps in the entire universe, only that old demon could force Lin Ming into the dirt like this. Where is Divine Dream? Seeing Lin Ming and not Divine Dream, everyone felt their hearts tighten. In particular, Empyrean Vast Universe, he couldn't even find a hint of her shadow, and he felt his heart fill with worry. But at this critical junction, he didn't dare send out a sound transmission and distract Lin Ming. But from beginning to end, the Soul Emperor hadn't even glanced at Emperor Sakya and the others. His attention had never even drifted over to them. The reason his smile froze seemed completely unrelated to these people. He continued gazing into the void, his lips curving up in a smile. I originally wanted to look for you first, but I encountered Lin Ming before that. Since I found him first, I might as well get rid of him first. HM? It seems you also brought some help with you? One of the Soul Emperor's eyebrows arched up. 100 miles away, space warped and twisted, and a black-clothed woman stepped out from the space channel. Behind this woman were two old men. This black-clothed woman was Shang Mei. As Shang Mei saw Lin Ming, she suddenly clenched her jaws tightly. As she looked at the Soul Emperor, her vision was as cold as the Nine Nether Abyss, filled with inexhaustible killing intent and hatred. Shang Mei. Lin Ming's heart sank as he saw Shang Mei appear. Although Shang Mei was strong, she couldn't do anything in front of the Soul Emperor. He didn't want Shang Mei to be drawn into this mess and be horribly tormented and killed by the Soul Emperor. But, as he saw the two old men behind Shang Mei, he was even further startled. These two old men were the guardians of the Azura Road, Clear in Ink. Lin Ming had seen Clear in Ink in the 7th level of the Azura Road's final trial. Because they had only vaguely displayed their strength, Lin Ming never knew what their boundary was. He only knew that they lived extremely long lives, because they were both part of the Temple Spirit race and possessed lifespans that far outstripped the other living races of the 33 heavens. Within the races of the Azura Road itself, there were two true divinities. Moreover, in the deepest depths of the Azura Sea, there were true divinity-level ancient beasts. For these two old men to be the guardians of the Azura Road, this meant their strength far surpassed the vast majority of true divinities. Clear in Ink were the servants of the Azura Roadmaster. When the saints invaded the divine realm in the past, Lin Ming had once sought out help from Clear in Ink. But they didn't help. Their answer was that only when Lin Ming possessed enough strength to become a player in the grand chess game of the world would he have the qualifications to understand the mysteries of the Azura Road and Azura Roadmaster. In other words, in the eyes of Clear in Ink, the saint race invasion of the divine realm wasn't anything at all. In the upcoming end of the world, a war between two races of the 33 heavens could only be considered an opening act. As guardians of the Azura Road, they had their own life mission. And this life mission was undoubtedly related to the demon god's tomb. Master. As for the battle between the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign and Lin Ming, that wasn't something they would intervene in. In fact, they would even take the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign's invasion of the divine realm as a grinding stone for Lin Ming to hone himself upon. Because if Lin Ming couldn't even defeat the Good Fortune Saint Sovereign,
then he would never be able to grow to the degree where he could face the demon god's tomb master before the great calamity arrived. You too. The Soul Emperor narrowed his eyes. He didn't recognize Clear or Ink. Although Clear and Ink lived long lives, when compared to the years that the Soul Emperor had existed, they were clearly dwarfed. When Clear and Ink started to protect the Azura Road, the Soul Emperor was still deep in recovery. The injuries from 10 billion years ago had been too heavy. It was only several 100 million years that the Soul Emperor seized this current body and began to slowly refine and build up his own power, conserving his strength. They had never met. That woman and those old men are. The human powerhouses glanced at each other. No one recognized Clear and Ink. And even the vast majority of people couldn't guess what Shang Mei's origins were. But what they could be sure of was that these three people were extremely strong. Now there were three more powerhouses of unknown origin as well as Lin Ming, someone who was severely wounded but remained like an injured wild beast that still possessed a terrifying combat strength. These four people faced the Soul Emperor together. "You old thing, your end has come," Clear said, his energy-filled voice reverberating through the void. The Soul Emperor looked at these two men. As he sensed their energy and law fluctuations, he suddenly smiled. "I was wondering just who it was, but it looks like nothing but the lackeys of that person. 10 billion years ago, your lord joined together with Immortal to destroy me, but not only could they not do anything to me, but they were instead defeated by me. Now, you two minions still dare to stand here and bray about. If you were in your complete form, then we would be instantly killed by you. But you are now nothing more than an avatar. Your complete form has been divided by the amethyst origin crystal, and the vast majority of your strength is locked in the dark abyss. Although we are not your match, we can still heavily wound you and ruin your plans." Clear and Ink glanced at each other and then took out their weapons. Clear's weapon was an array disc and Ink's was a great furnace. Lin Ming had seen this furnace once before. The phantom that it formed was the elementary version of the Galaxy Void Furnace. Facing these two old men, the Soul Emperor thought little of it. After entering seclusion this time, his strength had risen even further. As a beyond divinity level existence, how could his avatar be something that Clear and Ink could contend with? There was no true divinity capable of threatening him. He lifted the bone staff and gently passed his palms along its shaft. With it, a tear opened between his eyebrows and an eye appeared. This eye had no eyeball, nor did it have a pupil, rather, it was made from endless nothingness, as if this eye contained a dark universe. As Lin Ming saw this eye, he felt his heart sink. He was very familiar with the aura of the universe contained in it. It was the aura of the demon god's tomb. Chapter 22:18, The Soul Emperor's World. What the Soul Emperor cultivated was to fuse the superworld of the demon god's tomb into himself, turning it into his own strength. Finally, his body would become one with the world, and if the world was indestructible, then he would also be immortal. Now the Soul Emperor had opened up an eye between his eyebrows, and the endless starry skies contained within that eye was the world of the demon god's tomb. This meant that the Soul Emperor was already putting his full effort into this battle. This technique was also one that the Soul Emperor had yet to fully control because he hadn't finished his seclusion. After all, he had yet to thoroughly refine the demon god's tomb. Be careful, this old bastard is ready to go all out. Lin Ming, eat this pill. Ink and Clear nearly spoke at the same time. A round pill suddenly appeared in Lin Ming's hand. Lin Ming glanced down. This pill was a deep green, and it was unknown how it was refined. It seemed a bit soft, but it was as hard as jade. The surface of this jade bead was covered in circular traces, making it seem particularly special. Although he was puzzled, now was not the time to speak. He immediately swallowed down the pill and felt it melt within him, turning into a warm strength that revitalized his body. Lin Ming burning his own blood essence had originally caused permanent damage to his body. However, after eating up this pill, Lin Ming felt his own blood vitality surge through his body once more. Although it was impossible to completely cure the side effects created from overdrawing upon his life, it would increase his combat strength and extend it for that much longer. This sort of pill could immediately display effects after eating it and wouldn't need one to meditate and digest it. Moreover, it could help someone whose strength far surpassed most peak true divinity powerhouses. It could be imagined how precious it was. You rest first. Clear, let's attack. Ink and Clear look at each other. Both of them had lived for a long, long time, and had already formed a tacit understanding with each other. If they joined forces, then their combat strength would rise to another level. The two people stood in the void and a golden array diagram appeared beneath their feet. Ink and Clear were positioned in the two eyes of this array diagram. This array diagram was Clear's array disk. At the same time, a giant furnace floated above their heads, constantly revolving and emitting beams of light. Ra! With a loud roar, two Azura phantoms appeared behind both Clear and Ink. These Azuras seethed with killing intent and gradually fused with Ink and Clear's mortal bodies. The Azura phantoms were sucked into their bodies. Seeing this, Lin Ming was startled. Ink and Clear obviously cultivated the Azura Heavenly Tao, but their combat method in utilizing it was completely different from his own. After the two of them displayed their arcane techniques, their combat strength rose to an all-new peak. With it, their old and wizened appearance began to change. Their bodies rose and their expressions became grim and resolute. Their wrinkles vanished and their hair turned pitch black. They had rejuvenated themselves from their old age, restoring the appearance of their youths. Their muscles grew and their blood vitality rushed through their bodies. They had been reborn. Neither of them remembered when the last time they used the secret technique was. There were far too many limits on it, and for them it would exhaust a tremendous amount of their energies and even cause their lifespans to plummet. However, facing the Soul Emperor, they could no longer worry about such things. Attack! Ink and Clear shouted out together. The golden array disk and galaxy void furnace that swirled above and below also shot out, ruthlessly smashing down towards the Soul Emperor. Ink and Clear and struck out with all their strength. Seeing this, the Soul Emperor merely chuckled. From between his eyebrows, the void within that third eye rapidly expanded. The world of the demon god's tomb turned into a visible wave that rushed out and swallowed all. For a time, the Soul Emperor seemed to stand in a separate spacetime dimension. As for Ink and Clear, their attacks were all sucked into this different spacetime dimension. Bang! Bang! Energy exploded, an explosion with enough power to compare to a supernova. A storm of energy swept out. However, that separate spacetime remained stable to an unbelievable degree. Everything else was crushed by the storm of energy, but that spacetime remained undamaged. Like this, Ink and Clear's all-out attack had inexplicably vanished. All that remained were the golden array disk and giant furnace that slowly flew back into their hands. However, the array disk and furnace had lost a great deal of their spirituality by now. As the two of them saw their own respective weapons return, their bodies froze. From the start, their enemy, the Soul Emperor, had only stood not too far away in the void, not even taking a single step forwards. How is this possible? Ink and Clear were bewildered. Their joint attack was enough to instantly and overwhelmingly kill the vast majority of true divinities. Even though it would be impossible to kill the Soul Emperor like that, their attack still shouldn't be so weak and pathetic that they couldn't even touch the hem of his robes. He shifted away Senior's attacks. Lin Ming suddenly said, a dignified expression on his face. He was clearly aware of what cultivation method the Soul Emperor trained in and what that technique was just now. The problem was in the third eye that appeared between the Soul Emperor's eyebrows. Just now, the space of the demon god's tomb had expanded to an infinite degree from between his eyebrows and swallowed up Ink and Clear's joint attack. Shifted. After listening to Lin Ming's words, Ink and Clear gradually realized a possibility, and this possibility caused their complexions to change. What is withstanding your attack is not the Soul Emperor himself, but the world of the demon god's tomb. Lin Ming said,
his words confirming Ink and Clear's guess. As they realized this, their hearts sank and despair surged in their mind. To use a world to withstand their attacks? They could heavily wound the mortal body of the Soul Emperor, but what about destroying a world? Although it was said that a true divinity possessed the ability to destroy worlds, that was only true for low-level worlds. When it came to worlds like the 33 Heavens or Dark Abyss, these super-universes were worlds that true divinities simply didn't possess the ability to destroy. And the demon god's tomb was equivalent to a compressed super-universe. It had even managed to withstand the great shattering of the previous universal era. How could the power of man possibly destroy such a world? If the Soul Emperor could freely shift their attacks into the world of the demon god's tomb, then how could they continue fighting with him? He was already standing in an invincible position. Without a doubt, the space of the demon god's tomb was the most perfect and most indestructible defense in existence. Could this move have no limit? Ink asked, unwilling to admit defeat like this. The more powerful a technique, the more restrictions it had. This was true for all abilities. But this might not be true for the Soul Emperor, because the demon god's tomb was part of his body, and what he did just now was equal to using a part of his body to resist their attack. Lin Ming said with a sound transmission, "Seniors, the Soul Emperor had already started the initial fusion with the world of the demon god's tomb. This move shouldn't have a limit in what it can shift away, but perhaps there is a limit in how long the Soul Emperor can maintain this state." Lin Ming speculated. The basis of this conjecture was that the Soul Emperor hadn't completed his seclusion and hadn't thoroughly fused with the demon god's tomb. Moreover, when he fought with him, the Soul Emperor hadn't used this technique, and he even managed to wound the Soul Emperor because of it. This shouldn't be because the Soul Emperor underestimated him, but because there was some sort of limit. The Soul Emperor wasn't willing to use the space of the demon god's tomb from the start, so Lin Ming believed there must be some price involved in order to maintain this space. As long as there is a limit, then we just have to last until the end, Clear said, gritting his teeth. He also had some cards left hidden in his hands. Lin Ming said, "I remember that in the demon god's tomb, Senior Immortal Sovereign advised me to never fight with the Soul Emperor in the demon god's tomb unless I possessed the ability to tear apart the world of the demon god's tomb. We naturally don't have this ability. And just now, the Soul Emperor used the space of the demon god's tomb to absorb your attacks, and I don't know whether or not he can also suck us into the space of the demon god's tomb." Lin Ming's words were like a cold gale drifting up from the Nine Nether Abyss, causing a chill to creep up Ink and Clear's back. To suck everyone into the space of the demon god's tomb? This was the same as being a turtle in a jar. Anyone who was drawn in would undoubtedly die. What should they do? Ink and Clear were at a loss. And all they faced was the Soul Emperor, an avatar of his true form. If this were the complete form of the Soul Emperor, then he would have an even deeper level of control of the world of the demon god's tomb. If so, just how formidable would he be? Form the array, Ink said, his complexion solemn. He didn't know whether or not the eye between the Soul Emperor's eyebrows could suck them in, as Lin Ming said, but if he did use such an ability, the consequences would be unimaginable. "You think this can stop me? Then, it should be my turn to attack." As the Soul Emperor spoke, his strength began to climb without limit. The eye between his eyebrows expanded to an infinite degree. A black vortex appeared, swallowing in the surrounding heaven and earth origin energy. At the same time, Ink, Clear, Lin Ming, and Shang Mei all felt a massive suction force pull upon their bodies. A horrifying force field fell over them, blocking out their surroundings. This suction force made them feel as if they would soon be drawn into the space of the demon god's tomb. Their complexions changed. If the Soul Emperor truly possessed the ability to draw them all into the space of the demon god's tomb, then there was no need to continue this battle. All of them would surely die. This was the only outcome. Chapter 22:19, Cold Ice Mirror. The suction force of the vortex became increasingly terrifying. The Soul Emperor's body seemed to have turned into a giant black hole, and even the surrounding space began to collapse,
forming an absolute enchantment that covered everyone. Caught within this enchantment, Lin Ming, Ink, Clear, and Shang Mei felt their strength suppressed and their power greatly reduced. Not just that, but Lin Ming discovered that the space surrounding them experienced strange, qualitative changes. It became increasingly compact, simply indestructible. The Soul Emperor has formed a projection of the world of the demon god's tomb. Lin Ming suddenly realized. Perhaps the Soul Emperor might not have the ability to suck them into the demon god's tomb, but he could form a world projection and create an absolute domain. This world projection might not be as powerful as the true world of the demon god's tomb, but if it were only used to deal with them, then it was more than enough. It's over. All of you will die here. The Soul Emperor attacked. The dark and cruel bone staff in his hand began to gather the power within the surrounding space, turning that bone staff into a lance which shined with cold brilliance. The space of the demon god's tomb was incomparably stable, and the lance formed by this space was also incomparably sharp, capable of destroying the mightiest defenses. Fight! Clear and Ink simultaneously burnt their blood essence. They had already solidified their will to die here. Even if they had to give everything they had, today they would heavily wound the Soul Emperor no matter what. And at this time, from behind Clear and Ink, Shang Mei also attacked. During these years, Shang Mei had gone to the Azura Forbidden Land by herself and had only just returned when Lin Ming began his fierce battle with the Soul Emperor. He didn't have any idea what she had done during this time. Ha! A cold wind blew. From within the space that the Soul Emperor had blocked in, a river of cold ice emerged from thin air. This river of ice flowed through space. The river waters were endless and smoky, the waves vast and monstrous, limitless and without bounds. Seeing this, Lin Ming was shocked. Within the world projection of the demon god's tomb that the Soul Emperor formed, any laws or energy would be suppressed by the world strength of the demon god's tomb. Yet, Shang Mei was able to use such a move in this environment. This left Lin Ming surprised. Shang Mei, when did she become so strong? Rumble, rumble, rumble. The waters of the ice river parted and a giant ice plane soared up, camouflaging the void for 1,000 miles. The Azura Forbidden Land's cold ice mirror. Lin Ming was dumbfounded. Shang Mei had refined the cold ice mirror? This cold ice mirror was the supreme treasure of the Azura Forbidden Land. It could be called its foundation. Seniors, let's attack together. As Shang Mei spoke, she moved the cold ice mirror before them. Clear and Ink were extremely quick to react. They didn't ask why the cold ice mirror was here, but simply took advantage of this time to pour all their energies into it. Lin Ming also flew forth. He placed his hands atop the cold ice mirror and recklessly poured out the power of divinity and demons within him. Bang! The lance formed by the Soul Emperor violently clashed with the cold ice mirror. Energy surged out in monstrous waves and beams of rainbow-hued energies blasted outwards. Even the world projection of the demon god's tomb trembled, as if it would collapse. Ink, Clear, Shang Mei, and Lin Ming violently shook. The impact of the strike passed through to them from the cold ice mirror, crashing into their limbs and causing their blood vitality to tumble and their meridians to be damaged. Puff! The four of them spat out a mouthful of blood. With the Soul Emperor's strength alone, he had brutally struck them back. You also have such a technique left. The spirit treasure is interesting. How interesting. The Soul Emperor clearly recognized this cold ice mirror. The appearance of it caused a playful smile to play upon his lips. By relying on this spirit treasure, you gathered your strength together to withstand my attack. But how many times you can do this? As the Soul Emperor spoke, layers of killing intent flashed within his dirty eyes. He reached out his arms and laid them flat. At this time, the surrounding space seemed to meld into his body. Then, strength was whipped up into a frenzy. Lin Ming grimaced. He was far too familiar with this strength. During the 1,500 years that he had been in that period of deep seclusion, he had been refining this strength. This was the world strength of the demon god's tomb. But now, in the domain that the Soul Emperor had formed, this world strength had become the most terrifying weapon. Within this sealed space, the Soul Emperor was the ruler. The Soul Emperor raised his hands and a storm of world strength rose up in the world, recklessly swirling about. This storm was like a flurry of sharp knives that constantly cut apart at the group of four's protective barriers. A terrifying pressure shrouded their bodies. Everyone could feel the space around them tighten and contract. The world strength had turned into a cage that crashed down from them on all directions. The cold ice mirror could easily block a frontal attack, but to block an attack that came from all directions was far more difficult. "Everyone, help me!" Seeing the storm of world strength about to swallow the four of them, Xiang Mei once again brought forth the cold ice mirror. Without hesitation, she bit down on the tip of her tongue and spat out a mouthful of blood essence. Hum! 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 The cold ice mirror fiercely trembled. A great energy began to condense from its smooth surface. Clear, Ink, and Lin Ming glanced at each other. Without a second thought, they poured their strength into the cold ice mirror. A dark gray wave shot out from it. This wave looked unremarkable and was only the thickness of a bucket. But it tore through the storm of world strength and shot towards the Soul Emperor like an arrow. Seeing this wave hurtle towards him, the Soul Emperor's complexion slightly changed. This strength is. The Soul Emperor instantly realized that this was the strength sealed within the cold ice mirror and not Xiang Mei's own. Xiang Mei had only used her blood essence as the catalyst to unseal it. The Soul Emperor hastily drew backwards. At the same time, the vortex from the eye between his eyebrows reappeared once more. The world of the demon god's tomb expanded and completely swallowed this strength. The Soul Emperor had used the same move of summoning the world of the demon god's tomb to block off the cold ice mirror's attack. Ca. As this strength entered the world of the demon god's tomb, it didn't explode at all. Rather, it tore through the void, continuing until the end. The Soul Emperor's complexion paled a little bit. This strength is from Immortal? The Soul Emperor's eyebrow twitched. As this strength flew into the world of the demon god's tomb, it disappeared without a trace. And from the Soul Emperor's response, one couldn't see that this attack had any effect just now. Xiang Mei's heart sank. Although the cold ice mirror was the Azura Roadmaster's spirit treasure, the sealed strength she shot out just now was from her father. This was power of an incarnation that the immortal sovereign had forged in the past to protect and shelter her mother, and now it had been used by Xiang Mei. Perhaps because far too long a time had passed, or perhaps because the Soul Emperor's ability of using the world of the demon god's tomb to block attacks was too heaven-defying, but no matter what the reason was, nothing seemed to have happened to the Soul Emperor. Even the strength that father left behind cannot do anything to him, not even wound him? Helplessness surged in Xiang Mei's heart. Although that attack just now had torn through the storm of world strength, it hadn't been able to wound the Soul Emperor. Like this, it would be difficult to withstand the Soul Emperor's next attack. After all, every time she used the strength sealed within the cold ice mirror, it would be permanently weakened. That might not be true. Lin Ming suddenly said. His eyes blazed as he looked at the distant Soul Emperor. He said with a sound transmission, it might not have been easy for him to block that attack. Lin Ming's words caused the hearts of the three others to shake. Chapter 2220, The Final Attack. In the starry skies, the Soul Emperor frowned. Xiang Mei, Ink, Clear, and Lin Ming all held their breath. They didn't know what the Soul Emperor's situation was like. And the Soul Emperor seemed to be momentarily lost in thought. With a calm gaze, he looked upon Lin Ming and the others, not immediately attacking. The Soul Emperor remained motionless, as did Lin Ming and the others. After all, whether it was Lin Ming, Clear, Ink, or Xiang Mei, the four of them had all received varying degrees of injuries and had consumed a great deal of their blood essence. If the Soul Emperor continued his storm-like assault on them, then they wouldn't be able to last much longer. Now that the Soul Emperor's attacks had slowed down, they naturally had to take advantage of this time to recover. Ink and Clear each swallowed pills and also passed 2 to Lin Ming and Xiang Mei. But these pills were clearly not as precious as the one Lin Ming had just eaten. After eating them up, a period of digestion and absorption was required for them to play a role. Lin Ming thought for a moment. He said with a sound transmission, "Let's make one more bet." Clear and Ink were startled. Joined together to attack the Soul Emperor. Lin Ming's wounds caused the hearts of the others to skip a beat. "Are you saying that the Soul Emperor has already been injured and he requires even more time than us to suppress his injuries?" Xiang Mei suddenly realized this possibility. Originally, the Soul Emperor had grasped the initiative in the offensive, and he also knew that they were wounded and had consumed a great deal of their energy. But in this situation, the Soul Emperor still hadn't moved first to strike at them. Perhaps this meant that the Soul Emperor needed some time to adjust his condition. Could this be a trap? It was only a strike from the cold ice mirror. According to any logic, it shouldn't have been able to cause too great an effect, and from the looks of things there isn't anything different with the Soul Emperor. Clear and Ink hesitated for a moment. The might and power of the Soul Emperor was already deeply engraved within their hearts. For him to be severely wounded by Xiang Mei's last strike seemed truly incomprehensible. Lin Ming said, "I think there may be some other reason, but we still have to make this bet. Even if it is a trap, we still must rush into it, because if he recovers and attacks us again, we will all undoubtedly die." Lin Ming and the 3 others weren't a match for the Soul Emperor. If the battle dragged on, then their deaths were assured. Since this was the case, they might as well make one final desperate bet, since the result of that couldn't be any worse than waiting. As Lin Ming spoke, energy began to bubble up within his body and he burnt his blood essence once more. This was truly Lin Ming's limit. Even after eating up that last pill, this attack would completely exhaust his strength. Even if Lin Ming were to survive this battle, he would still have to suffer the consequences of overdrawing his blood essence. Since this was a life or death struggle, Xiang Mei, Ink, and Clear also desperately fought. They each erupted with their fullest potential, revolving their energies to the limit for this final strike. And not too far away, the Soul Emperor still had a gloomy expression. It was unknown just what he was doing. Lin Ming didn't hesitate. "Attack!" With a loud shout, Lin Ming fused the 2 highest laws within his hands. Although the Holy Scripture laws hadn't reached perfection, as he only had the 7 Revolution Red Lotus, these flaws were able to be made up for by Xiang Mei. At the same time, Ink and Clear fused the Azura Phantoms into their bodies once more, displaying their greatest strength. Lin Ming and Xiang Mei's attack merged together as one and joined with Clear and Ink's attacks. The 4 people attacked together and the energies gathered into 2 raging currents, hurtling towards the Soul Emperor like 2 wild dragons. Facing this overwhelming attack, the Soul Emperor fiercely grit his teeth. A sharp light flashed out from his filthy eyes. The world of the demon god's tomb erupted from between his eyebrows once more. Like a great vicious beast that swallowed all, it devoured every attack. Whoosh! The currents of energy smashed into the void. The Soul Emperor shook and he was forced backwards before barely managing to stabilize himself. On his originally pale white face, an abnormal red luster began to spread. At this time, as the Soul Emperor looked at Lin Ming and the others, his eyes held a reckless killing intent. But although this killing intent surged in his eyes, he still didn't counterattack. This left Lin Ming and the others startled. Without a doubt, the Soul Emperor had been injured somehow, or some hidden wounds had suddenly broken out, making it so that he had no choice but to stop and suppress them. Although they didn't understand what was happening with the Soul Emperor, no one would let go of this opportunity that had arrived in front of them. Lin Ming and the others were already in desperate straits. They had each burnt their blood essence several times already and couldn't possibly continue burning it. With their strength exhausted, their striking power was also limited. Thus, Xiang Mei summoned the Cold Ice Mirror once more. The Cold Ice Mirror still held Immortal's remnant strength, it was more than enough to attack the Soul Emperor with.
As the cold ice mirror appeared, the Soul Emperor's expression turned fierce and diabolical.
Lin Ming, Shang Mei, and the others didn't know what the Soul Emperor's problem was at the moment. And in truth, it wasn't the Soul Emperor's mortal body that was the problem, but something occurring in the world of the demon god's tomb. It was better to say that there were great changes occurring in the demon god's tomb's Emperor Bonzi. As for what these specific changes were, the Soul Emperor didn't have time to fully investigate. But he could guess that these changes were related to the ancient demon emperors that had been sealed away for all those billions of years. And it was also likely related to a mortal sovereign and the demon lord. These two existences were the greatest powerhouses within the Emperor Bonzi. While they were suppressed within, they naturally shouldn't have been able to cause any trouble. But now the Soul Emperor had left his seclusion early and also fought with Lin Ming and the others, not hesitating to use the world strength of the demon god's tomb that he had yet to fully refine. With the instability within the world of the demon god's tomb, the overdrawing of energy, as well as the invasion of Immortal's energy from the cold ice mirror, all of these factors combined together provided an opportunity for change within the Emperor Bonzi. The Soul Emperor could even imagine that Immortal's sovereign had been lying in ambush within the Emperor Bonzi all this time. Immortal's sovereign must have been waiting for this moment when his control over the demon god's tomb was at its lowest to suddenly burst out at this crucial junction point and give him a fatal strike. "You all deserve death." The Soul Emperor's expression became increasingly fierce. The demon god's tomb force field also turned increasingly unstable. Black flames seemed to light up in his eyes. Ha! From within the Soul Emperor's body, the roar of a great dragon seemed to suddenly burst out. The Soul Emperor's body started to tear open. Cracks appeared in his pale skin and black flames blazed out from these cracks, brilliantly gushing into the air. Before Lin Ming and the others attacked once more, the Soul Emperor moved first. In that moment, the Soul Emperor also spat out a mouthful of blood. "Be careful." Lin Ming's pupils shrank. He realized that the Soul Emperor was disregarding any backlash or wounds for this one strike. He wanted to take them all out here. The Soul Emperor's body burned with black flames and his target was also extremely obvious. It was Lin Ming. He wanted to kill Lin Ming. For him, this might even be his final chance. Once Lin Ming was allowed to escape, the consequences would be inconceivable. Within the void, the world strength of the demon god's tomb all gathered towards the Soul Emperor. Like a meteor that trailed with black flames, the Soul Emperor hurtled towards Lin Ming. With this sort of momentum, Lin Ming even thought that the Soul Emperor wanted to use this avatar to perish together with him. "Block it. Fight." Clear and Ink's eyes turned red. They realized that this might be the Soul Emperor's last attack. If they could survive this, then they would win. Hum. The cold ice mirror trembled as it shielded Lin Ming's front. Shang Mei's body began to burn with icy blue flames. All of her accumulations ever since reaching true divinity completely erupted in this moment. As for Clear and Ink, they stood on each side of Shang Mei. They gathered their hands together and burnt their blood essence one more time. Their mortal bodies began to wither and turn old with speed visible to the eyes. This scene left Lin Ming's heart aching. With the battle having reached this stage, there was no longer a path to retreat, for him or for anybody else. They could only risk everything they had. Lin Ming suppressed the hate and sorrow that simmered in his heart. He poured out his final strength, attacking together with Shang Mei, Clear, and Ink. The two sides brutally collided. The sounds of shattering filled with air, following with waves of energy that fired off in all directions. The surface of the cold ice mirror shattered. Shang Mei bore the brunt of the attack. As the controller of the cold ice mirror, she had poured all of her strength into it, including even her divine soul. In this final collision with the Soul Emperor, she withstood the greatest burden. Puff! Shang Mei spat out a mouthful of blood. Her field of vision began to blur. The impact against her soul nearly split apart her spiritual sea and almost caused her to lose consciousness. She desperately tried to suppress the agonizing pain spreading through her soul. With her having overdrawn her energy and with this last attack, she really couldn't withstand anything more. Lin Ming, Clear, and Ink were all shaken away by the energy. The Soul Emperor's hair was scattered about him and his body was bathed in blood. In this final strike, the Soul Emperor had paid a heavy price. This was because he overdrew on the energy needed to control the demon god's tomb, and the Emperor Bone Sea had almost collapsed. But Lin Ming still didn't die.